Wonderful. All right, so next, do we have any public comment on non-agenda items?
We do not.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, mine's working. Yours is not?
So I will just read this in-person disclosure real quick before we move on. Individuals may address the board on agenda and non-agenda items during public comment and/or at the time they are under consideration by completing the speaker form provided on the table at the entrance and submitting to Renee Holes, over there, our administrative assistant. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per individual. Speakers will be chosen in random order. A timer will be set for 3 minutes. If you do not complete your comment when the timer rings, you may leave a written comment for the board's information. Each person may only speak once per agenda topic and is required to address the board from the podium. A total of 20 minutes public comment per topic will be allowed. In exceptional circumstances, the board may consider adjusting the amount of time allowed for public comment. Public comment cannot be acted upon or discussed by the board in accordance with the Brown Act. The board may request staff to respond orally at the meeting or at a future time. If you require translation service, please contact Renee at the district office 72 hours in advance by phone or email. Regular meetings will be videoed and broadcast on FBUSD YouTube channel. Members of the public who wish to address the board may also submit public comments prior to the start of the meeting by emailing boardmeeting@fbusd.us. That's boardmeeting@fbusd.us. Staff will make all attempts to share and record any submissions received prior to or during the board meeting. However, depending on timing, late submissions may be provided to the board after the conclusion of the meeting. Comments are also limited to 3 minutes each, which is approximately 390 words. Okay, with that, we'll move on to patriotic exercise.
All righty. We have a PowerPoint. There we go. Oh, there it went. Can we do the slideshow version or no? Oh, yeah, okay. My password, sorry. So I'll start by telling you, we all know it's Martin Luther King Jr. We have our holiday coming up next Monday. He was born January 15th, 1929, and was assassinated August 4th, 1968. Oh, that's okay. I slaved away hours on this, but that's okay. I'm teasing. Okay, oh, is that the second slide? Okay, I don't think so. But I don't have to do them in order. Okay, well, I can just talk about it. We can leave it on that. That's the last slide, but don't read it yet. So I already, oh. That's, okay, we can go on to the next one. Thank you. Okay, so Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement and changed the course of history. Lerone Martin, director of the Martin Luther King Jr. Research and Education Institute at Stanford University, says of Dr. King that despite all the disparagement he endured, King did a wonderful job of constantly trying to show how his efforts were in line with American ideals. You can go to the next slide. Dr. King was a Trekkie. I wanted to get some unknown facts about him in there. So he actually, I think I have it on the next slide. You can go next. He was instrumental in the actress playing Lieutenant Uhura staying in the role. She had decided to leave the show, and he told her for the very first time on television, "We will be seen as we should be seen every day, as intelligent, quality, beautiful people who can go into space." So she stayed throughout the whole tenure of the show. At the well-known The Dream speech at the March at Washington, D.C., gospel singer Mahalia Jackson, he was doing a different speech. He'd written something totally different, and she was standing off to the side. That's her, straight in the middle, saying, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." So to the next one. the famous speech that starts, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will," I'm sorry, will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged. I am such a baby, I'm sorry. By the color of their skin, but by their content of their character. I have a dream today. I haven't practiced this. I need to take one of your classes again. Okay, moving on. I apologize. He was only 39 when he was assassinated 56 years ago. He spent the last 13 years of his life in the public eye campaigning for civil rights and racial equality. Go on. I'll get a grip. He won the Nobel Peace Prize December 10th, 1964. And you can read there, for his dynamic leadership of all the civil rights movement and steadfast commitment to achieving racial justice through nonviolent action. His legacy of raising up all people and recognizing that under our skin we are, after all human beings, carries on. Next. And this is the last one. So in honor of Dr. King and to celebrate the anniversary of his birthday, this was also in the speech, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident." So, that's it. Next time I won't cry.
Thank you, Mary. It's very nice. Thank you. Moving on to acknowledgements.
Alrighty. So, we wish to acknowledge that this is National Blood Donor Month, National Staying Healthy Month, January, kind of makes sense. Of course, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day will be observed on the 15th this year, so it falls on his birthday. International Holocaust Remembrance Day is on the 27th of the month, and the Great Kindness Challenge Week is January 22nd through 26th. In addition, January is also School Board Recognition Month, so I want to say a big thank you to you all. And I will ask you to please share with me what you would like for our 20th. I will take care of breakfast and all the fixings and that sort of thing, so as a thank you for our workshop on that day. So send out a little email to remind you of that, and try to bring some nice treats for you on that day. Just as a small thank you for all the time and efforts that you put into things, because it's a pretty big deal. You do some pretty cool things. So we really appreciate you being here and giving to our community.
Thank you. And I just wanted to point out real quick the Great Kindness Challenge Week. A year ago, we heard all about it, and we're really excited about the sites being involved, and hopefully this year, some of the sites again will get even more involved. Seems like it's a great thing for the kids. Moving on to item 6, communication. If anyone's received any communication since the last meeting.
I have two emails from Diana Ware. She's the, what do we call it? I have the reading specialist. Joe, what was Diana's,
So the first was inviting us to an event this past weekend, and then the other was making us aware of an article, I believe.
Right.
So,
but all about reading.
on science of reading.
Yep.
And I had a community member reach out, so I don't know if you can answer this now, but they were asking about the blast that's going on social media and through Parent Square about the donations on the 27th. They were wondering kind of what the background was on that, and well, their question was really, is our district in that much of a need that and of course.
So this is more for students to have the opportunity to go to the John Dietrich Center, and we have the washer and dryer there so they can take care of their own needs there, have access to hygiene products. And for all district students, I know at the high school we have the pantry that serves some of those needs, but this is a sort of a passion project with our bilingual family liaison, kind of fueling that and seeing, with the hopes to one day, as we build a new campus for Alted, maybe using one of the older buildings there as a more permanent, broader space where we could maybe put more washers and dryers in and have folks actually have some access to be able to just take care of some of those basic needs that exist for a lot of our students. So.
And I actually thought it was, my mic's working, but I thought it was the S Club from the high school. It was actually like student run.
It does refer to that in the bulletin.
Okay.
I did see that.
Which is for Optimus, like the younger
the student group.
student group, so that this was their mission.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
they were assisting in that.
Yes, yeah. I know we had some folks, it's been Leah Garrett and Martha Lopez have been instrumental in kind of getting this off the ground and kind of just, and talking with parents. These are needs that kept coming up in Martha's role. So I think it's just it's a nice neutral space that they can go to and hopefully get them in the door, because we have our Blue Door services and all the other pieces that are there as well. So kind of a way of turning the JD Center into a really community hub that provides a lot for our kiddos.
And do you have, now that we've talked about it so much, do you have the specific details for those?
I'm sorry?
Do you have the specific details? So it's the 27th, certain time of day,
27th
place?
at Dana Gray, and I know they were using Dana Gray parking lot, and I'm not sure of the time. I'm sorry.
I think it's 9 to 1, 9 to.
It's all over social media.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you're interested, it's all
I
over.
think it
the
came from
internet.
Parent Square too, but.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be posted again on Friday, this Friday and next Friday as well.
Perfect.
It'll be pushed out.
Okay, any other communication?
Yes, as a result of the press release that was sent out, Mary Benjamin with The Advocate has asked to interview me. So I'll be interviewed by her tomorrow.
Perfect. Good luck.
And then I'll just mention that our Pacer, Trevor, I don't know if we're, Paige, if we're meeting with him or if he's going to be presenting or how that's, have you heard anything from him?
I haven't heard anything, no.
Okay, because with the webinar today, they really say that we have to advocate through, especially for ledge action.
Okay.
And this would be the time to probably talk with him first.
Okay.
See what
What's his
their
last name?
page.
Page.
All right, moving on. Next is public comment on any agenda items. And this is a time you can talk about any agenda item, any item on the agenda. There's also opportunity at each item to make comment if so desired. Anything come in, Renee?
I'm not aware of any public comment requested at this time.
Okay, so moving on to number 8, reports. First report we have is our student rep.
All right. I think mine is working. Okay. Perfect. So I'm going to start. I didn't get one back from Redwood, but I did check in with some of students that some of my friends' siblings that I know there. Things are just going good, I guess. It sounds like from what a little 5-year-old told me is that they are enjoying being back at school, but they also miss sleeping in. So that was a very legit report I got. And then let me continue looking at Dana Gray. It sounds like things are going really good with the Pod Squad. They are giving tours of campus, and they are also preparing for the Great Kindness Challenge Week. They're going to have that filled up with dress-up days, door decorating, and opportunities to just show their kindness around the school, home, and just the community. So that is great. And then at the middle school, basketball season is in full swing. Wrestling is now starting. And they have a parents club meeting on Tuesday at 6 p.m. And then their next dance will be February 9th. And then at Noyo, it sounds like everyone is happy to be back. They have changed their advisory classes, so it is no longer, so that 9th and 10th graders are in one advisory and 11th and 12th are in 2 separate. It sounds like everything is going well with writing, then their learning plans, and they also are looking into internships and are also going on a trip to the Academy of Sciences, which is super exciting. And then on to the high school. Sports are also in full swing with basketball and wrestling, and spring sports are coming up pretty soon. Report cards just came out, and it's now everybody's just getting adjusted. Sickness is going around, so that's not great with the healthy. I think this was the health month. Yes. Just ironic, but yeah. And that should be all for the schools.
Great. All right, moving on. General obligation bond funds construction project update.
Yes, so in speaking with Don, there hasn't been a lot of activity to share, so he will be with us next month. I can report that our plans for Phase 2 at Redwood are at DSA. We expect to get comments back on them. And speaking with the architect today, they think the next 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere in there, that we should see comments so that we can figure out what the next steps are. Said it seems like we're on track to start construction this summer at Redwood on Phase 2. So exciting stuff happening there. Other than that, things have been pretty quiet. We're closing out Phase 1 of Redwood. There were just a few I's dotted and T's crossed kind of things that needed to happen. But otherwise, I think we're pretty well at conclusion there, and that'll be good. We can close it out with DSA and move on.
Is all the fencing, is that all fixed and taken away? It needs to be taken away, or it's still?
Yes, the fencing out front was taken away. The fencing back toward where the next phase will be, they kind of just rearranged for a little while because they're just going to be coming right back to it. So.
All right.
All right. So next we have Bruce.
Welcome, everyone. You can skip to the next slide. So sorry that this has been postponed quite a few times. We were waiting for Aries Analytics, and unfortunately, it still is not. We purchased it, the district, so thank you for that. But they haven't trained all of us yet. So we're waiting on that. So eventually, we'll have a little more slides for you. So you can go to the next one. So English department, they did their large one. It's all grade level. It takes a lot of time to go through all these. You can go to the next one. So there's kind of what the English department as a whole, they did the subjective reflection article. And as we go further down, you'll see you see the science. Hopefully this will help in all categories, because some of the things they noticed in science and in English is claims were the difficulty with showing their evidence, and it's hopefully as we continue doing this, it will go across the board. It will support all of our subjects. So because we couldn't pull out all the information, they went through it one by one. So I tried to limit how much work they put into it, because it would have taken them, they would have had to do it on their own, so it would take them forever. So I just said, you can do it in Word format. So as you can see, they went through all of the freshmen, and you can continue on, and same thing with the sophomores and juniors and seniors.
I really wanted to put this in a chart so I could see,
Yeah.
I had to do the math.
yeah.
Well, that's the goal, is that Aries Analytics will do it for us.
Yes.
It's small numbers.
And then you can pull out all of the subgroups and things like that, but the difficulty is I didn't want them to go and hand calculate every subcategory in their classes to get all the
I was
information.
just looking at, in each category, how many did
Right.
not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You can go to the next one. So there's the overall. I think they're working. They see that, and this was a new one. They changed it again. So I think they're trying to come up with something that it was a thought they saw where their struggles in each grade level, and so this was their big way of trying to see how much improvement they could do in their writing, and showing using evidence for whatever they write in their essays, the claims that they write. So I think they were getting it, but we have a lot of work to do still. Science, moving out, I think they were the ones that really used Edgenuity, and that they can pull out all the stuff from years past because of the Aries. So we're waiting for Aries, and hopefully we can figure out if Aries can get the standards in there, because it's good to go back and see year to year on how well students are improving. So that's the goal, is hopefully the Aries, we can get that information from them as well. And again, same thing as, they did a thing where they read read some information, and then it goes out where they graph all the stuff. And I think the hard part is they're noticing that they're getting the information, but when they have to show their evidence, they're not really understanding that part. So hopefully with English and science working on it, that they'll put those two together. And math were, you know, they were the ones that struggled the worst, because trying to get the information out, that would have been even more of a nightmare for them. So again, hopefully Aries Analytics will support this. We are currently looking at, we were trying to do interim assessments through the state, because that does correlate better with the CASP test, but it hasn't been the most user-friendly, their system. So we're trying to figure out, that's what, you know, we were looking at going into that, but getting the data back out of the system has been the problem. We can take the test, it gives us some results, but it doesn't, getting that information back out has been a problem.
Can you just explain what ELL and IEP are?
The what's that?
ELL and IEP, just kind of spell them out, I guess.
ELL is English Language Learners,
Okay,
and IEP is Individual Education Plan.
thank you.
So those are some of the categories, subgroups, I guess, could be in classes. So they're seeing improvement. I think you saw it on the CAST. They did a little better than last year, and so they're trying to figure out, you know, where the struggles are, and they're using their warm-ups, because, you know, as we know, there's not enough time in classes, so they're using their warm-ups to go back and reteach, which they've shown some improvement. Any questions?
Because the one department used the Kelly Smith's templates, and I know that, is it Dana Gray that is changing the data? But are we at a place with Ingenuity going and Aries, are we gonna change the
I don't think
format
so.
in which we're gonna get the information?
I think we're gonna try to use a similar format.
And we're a little frustrated with Aries. They promised us that they would have it up and running by December 18th so that we could come back and have it. And as soon as they got our purchase order, we've had no contact with them.
Oh, nice.
So we've called support, and we've called management, we've called, so we're pretty frustrated, because it should have been a pretty straightforward way to get this out for you, but it was not. So I apologize. That's completely on us completely on me for not getting that done sooner. So.
But no, the goal is to go with the same format. It was just because they didn't have their information, it was difficult to put it in the format. So I just said put it in Word form, but we'll hopefully do it better next time.
And the other departments are, because I think you had the other departments before too that reported out.
Yeah.
They're doing an ELA, doing something to support the.
Yes.
We'll wait.
Any other questions? All right,
All right, thank you.
thanks, Bruce. All right, next up is the Alt Ed campus highlights.
Good evening, everyone. So I think our main focus today is we're just going to report back a little bit on the trip that we got to take in December. We got a smaller group than actually went. Like a lot of the sites, the nasty cold has been ripping through. So there's a few people down for the count today. I'm going to do a quick sort of overview of the trip, but really just leave it to the students to kind of talk about their experiences. Vanessa put together a slideshow for us as well with some photos. But I'll let her kind of guide through that, or whoever comes up next. So thanks to the board, we were able to do a 5-day trip in Philadelphia. So we had 3 days of conference and a couple of days sightseeing. The conference this year was they changed up a little bit. It was a little bit less workshop-y and much more just focused on learning through doing. So we spent 2 days in advisory groups. The students were split through, we weren't all together. And we went out and we visited some schools in the Philadelphia area. I think one of the students went to New Jersey and visited a school there. And the sort of the concept was that within our groups, we were addressing real-world live issues that the school sites we were working with were going through. And so there was looking at the facilitation process and the brainstorming with the idea that, you know, through those conversations, we were all gaining insights to bring back. And then, you know, there were a variety of speakers and things throughout. The theme of the conference, since we were in the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, was leadership as heart and soul work. There's a big focus on, it's not just about the brain when you're teaching, it's very much about the heart and the soul. And so a lot of the speakers were really focused on like the emotional connection with students and with colleagues and things like that. And, you know, I think so it was fun. I got a lot out of it. I think the students did too, but I'm going to let them talk a little bit about that. So we're going to have Damien and Darren are going to talk a little bit about the fun sightseeing part, and then the others are going to come up and talk a little bit about their sort of personal experience. And then, of course, questions galore afterwards if you wish. Okay.
Hello, I'm Damien. First, we went to the Liberty Bell. I think it was important to look at things like this because the bell resembles when we first had freedom. Resembles freedom, yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm nervous. And the reason why it was cracked, I found out, is because whoever was setting it up when they was mounting it on the wall to test the sound of it, it just cracked right away. So they have it for people to see. And then we went to the president's house while at the Liberty Bell. We got to see just where the base of where George Washington and John Adams lived. It's pretty cool to see how much we've grown with architecture because they called that place a mansion, I guess, back then. And it's not that big. But, how about that?
We then went to the Independence Hall, which is where the United States Declaration was signed and American gained independence. A pretty important site historically, you know, founding the Americas, or America. Also important to me because one of my ancestors was one of the 2 Irish people to sign the Declaration, George Taylor. And then we also visited Betsy Ross House, which is the creator of the first United States flag. And I don't know much about it. There wasn't a lot of historical information there, per se. It was more just kind of the site itself.
I thought Betsy was pretty cool to see because only one person was able to make America's flag, so that's why I did. Oh yeah, and then this is a big piece of history for Philly, I'd say, because Rocky, we got to go see the Rocky Steps as you've seen right there. I still need that picture. But I thought that was pretty cool, running up the steps, just being there. And we found out that when we were there, he was there that day, but in the morning, so we got to miss him. But yeah.
Hello, my name is James Garza. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the original meeting where they had introduced the whole trip, but I'm glad that I'm able to make this one. My personal experience, I loved the trip. It was so much fun, and I feel like I got a lot out of it in terms of like being a better leader for our school. A lot of it for me was just like being able to brainstorm better and really like thinking about the more student-led aspects of things instead of only focusing on like how to do things professionally and like all the different tiny little details that go into it, just focusing more on like what the students want and then figuring out how we can make that stuff work around their needs and wants. And yeah, I love the conference part of it just because we got to see like and meet a lot of people from like around the world, and hear about the good things that happen at their school, but also the things that they think they need to work on, because at our school we have a lot of great things going on, but we also have a lot of things that we could work on, and that's kind of like our whole job, is figuring out how to solve those problems and make it better. So being at this conference was really helpful because we just got to see like the ins and outs of a lot of different schools, especially the ones that we visited in Philly. We got to, the school that I visited was called Vox High School, and it had all 4 grade levels. It was pretty crazy because it had like 4 stories and an elevator in it, which was something that I've never seen in a school, like ever. So it was crazy walking in there because it's like, they could probably fit all of our classrooms just in their cafeteria, so it was pretty crazy being in there. But yeah, I personally loved the trip, and I thank you all for approving it, because it's probably, I'm never gonna forget something like that. I think a lot of people don't really get opportunities like that, especially at All Ed. So it's like a first for everyone, and I'm glad that I got to be a part of it as the first out of state trip for us. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Vanessa Doty. I'm the one who created the sideshow. Yeah, as James was saying, this was probably one of the biggest things that has happened at our school, because we have such low opportunities because we're such a small school. It was a very new experience for me because I've never traveled anywhere out of California before, so being on a plane and going to explore different areas around the United States was very life-changing, really. It made me realize how much more is out there, just because being stuck in this small town, there's only so much to see. The conference was something I feel like everyone should at least experience once. It was very, like, I learned a lot doing it, like, as being a leader and as being able to make a change at my school. It was very good to see at the conference the relationships built and being able to speak from other people that are just like me, like other students too, like wanting to make a change in their school and wanting to give their students and peers more opportunities. And since we went to Vox, we visited some students, and it was just nice to see that we're not the only ones struggling. Like, we aren't alone as a small school, because there was another school in Washington that's a very small school, smaller than our school, and it made me realize how much we could do. And one thing that I had learned from the conference is that it takes more than being in a professional setting to be a leader. It takes empathy, and it takes to be vulnerable to be a leader and being able to speak about the issues that you have. And it takes a lot to be, everyone could be a leader, but it definitely takes to be vulnerable, and it definitely takes a lot of compassion. You gotta want something to change to make it change, and I feel like everyone as a leader you want change, and you want to make everything better. And yeah, it was definitely something new for me. And my dad, who was a chaperone there, he had never really gone out there and been on a plane too, like, even if you are as old as he is, you know, to go out there, and especially him from being in Noyo too. He used to go to Noyo, and you know, it's just, thank you, really. It was very, like, as James was saying, I don't think I'll be able to forget this, because I probably won't have any opportunity like that in the long run, really. So yeah.
So Danica is going to say a couple of words. So Danica is one of the chaperones and one of the parents, and so she's just going to say a couple of words too.
I just wanted to say that it was amazing to see them be able to experience something outside of Fort Bragg and how well they handled themselves and how respectful they were of everybody that they came across. So being in an airport, being sightseeing and, you know, crowded areas, or even just in the conference setting, how respectful they all were of elders, of even when we went out bowling with other schools, and how respectful they were in communicating with them and spending time with them, and just how they handled themselves all around. It was very impressive and very well respected of them and their respect for others. So it was just great experience to see and to get to know the kids a little bit more and spend that time with them and see them outside of their element and enjoying it and behaving.
I'll just wrap up by saying that in talking to students the last, since we came back, and just seeing them around campus, the heads are a little higher, right? There's a confidence there that has grown significantly as part of the experience. And I think, as they kind of mentioned, there was sort of two parts to the experience, right? There was the conference where they were treated as equals with principals, superintendents, politicians that were there, and their voice was oftentimes elevated above the adults in the room as, you're the real people that can talk about this. But then there was also just the experience of being in Philadelphia, going across the country, seeing something completely different. And I think I'm really excited for this leadership group going through the remainder of the school year. I think they came back with a real strong appreciation of not just possibility and opportunity, but also like seeing what goes into building a school, and really understanding like the challenges, and maybe now having a more nuanced understanding of like there are things that we want to do. It's not as easy as just wanting to do them, and so we're excited to get back into the work of leadership at the site and really kind of figuring out how to keep growing what we're doing and build the program that we're building. With that, if you have any questions for anybody, I'm sure they would love to answer.
Any questions?
What was your favorite thing you ate? What does Philly have to share?
The Philly cheesesteak.
There you go.
Same here.
Any other
Thank you.
questions?
If you were going to pick one thing that you wanted to do right away at your school site, what was the one great idea that you guys got?
One really great one that I saw and heard a lot was just having like more fun things to do and events at the school. Like we have some things going on like every once in a while with like sports games with the Coast Guard and stuff like that. But a lot of the things that we heard were like just like more spontaneous sort of things and having them be more frequent. So the students have a lot of stuff to like look forward to and to work up towards, especially if it's shown as like a reward or something for us. Reaching a certain point, doing whatever we're doing, it feels really good to all of us students because like we try and work as hard as we can. So those kind of things, even though they're like single day things, feel super special because it's just like we worked for this. So it just feels really nice to have that kind of stuff. So those sort of things that I heard at least, I kind of want to try and bring more of those events to the school.
So I was wondering, did you make connections with people where you're going to stay in contact? And
I actually have one of the kids' Instagram, but we don't really text, but we were close when I was there. we were.
Okay, I have a question. You guys said it was your first out-of-state trip. You guys and your teachers going on another conference or
Definitely.
Yeah, as he said, definitely. But I'd like to, just go to much more smaller schools, because since we're in such a small school as well, I'd like to see how they work. Because in Vox, we didn't really get to see how the students interacted with each other. We were just put in advisories and kind of just in a circle speaking amongst principals and administrators. But I'd like to see and be able to communicate with, as Vox in El Centro, I'd like to speak to the students too. So more schools out of California, because I am in a California state leadership group and already speak to schools from California. So it'd just be nice to see how other states' schools work. I mean, I feel seeing the students interact with each other and how they interact with people that are tourists and from a totally different place, it would be nice to visit other schools.
I want to add something. For anybody who hasn't been to the city, it's just like in the movies. There's steam coming out of the floors. And, homeless people. Yeah, it's like I almost had a squirrel eat out of my hand.
Going back to what Vanessa said about the smaller schools, I think that's super important for us too as leaders to see how similar we are to other schools, but also to see how different we are from other schools and how things work better or worse at those schools, and try and shape our school around that and try and make it just a more general, universal experience for everyone. Because living in Fort Bragg, a lot of schools are super, super different from a lot of schools in other places in California. So it's getting to have those similarities to those other schools, especially in places that kids want to visit and get out of Fort Bragg to go check out. It's really good for us because we get to make our school more like that and bring it to them instead of them always just dreaming about going to this specific school or doing this specific thing. We can bring it to them and have it actually in our school.
Any other questions?
Sounds like you could network with others, and be able to stay connected and motivated. That's very exciting.
So no one had a true Philly soft pretzel? No?
A what?
A Philly soft pretzel?
No.
All right.
I do, it's not a question, but I do want to thank whoever, I watched you guys on Facebook, and so I really enjoyed being on the trip with you guys. So I could see little snippets. I mean, these are great pictures too, but it was really fun to see you guys there.
And you guys have one of my childhood buddies on your slide there.
Oh,
Philly Fanatic, if anyone doesn't know who that is.
I just want to thank these two right here, and Danica and Vanessa's dad, for just keeping us safe in the city and making sure that we're supposed to be. And it was just a really fun trip. So thank you guys.
Well, the energy and enthusiasm you guys did great. Is just, we love it. So thank you for sharing with us and for going and all the effort, staff and parents put into going. And yeah, we hope this is the first over the years of many for kids in the district. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you all. Okay.
All right, so moving on to the next report.
All right, so we have Kelly Smith is joining us, and so on board, I know it's been a while since you've seen Kelly. I think it was probably the meeting I was hired at. I think was maybe the last time.
Is that right?
Yes, I think you did a little data presentation during that time. So.
Nice.
Yeah, so.
I want to apologize ahead of time for having a cold, so hopefully I won't spread any germs. But I know they're not bad germs, just in case everybody is worried about that. Again, my name's Kelly Smith. I'm so happy to be here to spend some time with you. if you looked at my slide deck, there are 19 slides. And Joe told me I had 10 minutes. So don't worry. But I did want to give you a little background on me. So last time I was here, I don't think I really introduced myself. And I want you to have a little sense of, kind of what I've been doing over the last 40 years, but really the last few here in Fort Bragg. But I want you to know that I started teaching in Salinas. So my background is mostly with English learners. And I taught in Salinas for 10 years, and then I started working on district-wide coaching. So I worked in that role for another few years, and then I got assigned to work at the Department of Education writing tests. And I'm interesting. And I think I'm funny. My mom thinks I'm hilarious, but nobody else really does. But writing tests gave me a really deep sense of the sort of how do we know how well and whether or not kids really are able to learn. And so I think that the data analysis side of the work I've done here is really founded in that work that I did at the Department of Education. And during the years that I worked there, it was really during the time of Beyond the Bubble. So in fact, we threw conferences that were called Beyond the Bubble. And the idea behind that is, how can we find authentic ways of knowing whether or not kids have actually learned the content? And so what we've done here in Fort Bragg over the last few years with iReady, is really a bubble and related to the bubbles that they have to succeed at for CASP and all of the other tests that come along. But I do think that one of the questions I got ahead of time from you is what are next steps? And one of the things we've just started to do with the middle school, we're starting with the elementary school, and I know the high school's really been trying to do this, which is how do we give authentic tests, kids write or create or do something, and then how do we score those in a way that's super consistent and comprehensive and tells us something that's valid and reliable data. So the tricky part of having things that are constructed is then coming up with ways to construct scoring that gives really, really good data. And when I was at Department of Education, we scored 2.3 million tests over a summer. It was super fun. But we'd bring in hundreds of educators, and we'd get to the point where we could score as reliably as a computer. So we were looking at about an 8%, 8 out of every 10 being exactly the same score. And we just started that with the middle school about, I don't know, what was that, a month ago, 2 months ago?
I think it was in October. And Kelly, I actually reported to that.
Oh, wow. You stole my thunder. But we're going to start playing with that in the next couple weeks at the elementary school. And then the thing that's super cool about what the high school's been doing around assessment is they've been doing constructed pieces, but now it's figuring out how to make that aligned. And in the high school, it's harder because you go from month to month to month. And what things do we hold up at the top that we can score over time to see comparisons? You guys all with me on this? I know it's data stuff. But anyway, that process is really good, and it's part of sort of my passion. So if you go to slide 2, I'm kidding, but we are going to go to slide 2. That's the overview of my organization, and it really is all about all kids can and deserve to succeed at high levels. That's the bottom line. And what I really think is important for you to understand is I've worked here since 2018. I went to get ready for this. I went back and looked at the first little rounds of things I did. So 2018 is a long time. And then we had COVID in the middle. So that disrupted a little bit. But I didn't do any work at the elementary school until after COVID. So the thing that's interesting to me now, the thing that's exciting for me, I can't tell you how excited I am to actually work with your school district. And I really thank you for the opportunity. The folks here are amazing. I don't go anywhere else where I go to the grocery store and people go, "What are you having for dinner?" Because it's people that you all know each other. And most places I go, I don't even know people at my grocery store. So it really is a very unique area, and it really, I feel very, very honored to be here. But here's the thing that's exciting. You can go to go back, Renee, thank you. You can go to all of your schools, and we're all focused on the exact same things. Teaching to standards at high levels, that left-hand box. Making sure that every kid knows what they're being asked to learn and how they'll show they've learned it. So when we do these walks, we're asking kids, what are you learning right now? How are you going to show that you've learned it? And kids, I mean, it's pretty cool that in kindergarten and 12th grade, whatever, you can ask the same questions, and kids are being given the opportunity from teachers to know what that information is. So there's not a lot of places that are like that. I was trying to think of, getting ready for this, how many school districts I've worked in, and I'm pretty sure it's between 500 and 1,000 school districts. I mean, it's probably closer to 1,000, because I've been doing this kind of work since the year 2000, and I worked in a big company, and I actually worked in Philadelphia. Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, and then down to little tiny school districts with one school. So it ranges from your size to smaller and way, way bigger. But there's very few school districts that have that singular focus on teaching to objectives and using standards-based assessments to know whether or not the kids have learned it. So that's that left-hand box that we're putting lots of time into. There's tons of slides around how they develop those objectives. I gave some examples in there so you can see what that looks like. Then on the right-hand side, probably the more exciting for teachers is, how do I engage kids? And we're really focusing on strategies to get at engagement, but also upping that level of student-to-student interaction. So how are kids talking to each other and engaging with each other in order to learn? And I think the last round we did at the high school is, the more you talk, the more you learn. So getting kids to really use instructional talk as a focus. Next week, if you're interested, at the elementary schools, we start working on math talk. So we're going to turn the corner from working on literacy to really taking that same idea into what does it look like to use talk as a way to engage kids in mathematics in a deeper way, and really getting at both procedural skills and fluency, but also that conceptual understanding, which is the part that's hard. It's easy to do skills. It's hard to get, why is it conceptually working the way it is? So we're just launching. It's the very first round into math next week for the elementary. So that's that right-hand box. And then the bottom box is really around, how are we using professional opportunities to give teachers ways to engage with each other to really create coherence across the system. So instructional rounds, some of you have participated in instructional rounds. So walking through classrooms, looking for the same things, everybody knows what we're looking for. We stay a similar amount of time. Teachers get to look into each other's classrooms. I had a few folks when we first started this in 2018 who taught next door for 20 years and had never been in each other's classroom in an instructional way. So that's pretty cool, right? That they get to see what the practices of the folks that they're working with. And then finally, the other thing that I think you should be super proud of is your professional learning communities are better than any school district I've ever worked in. And in part because it's data-driven. And in part because of, I know that the board presentations on this data work take a lot of effort on your part and a lot of effort on the school's part. But I can tell you that because you're doing that part of it, the conversations in the PLCs are higher and more engaged. Because I don't have any other school district that's aiming that data analysis toward an audience. And what generally happens is folks fill out a form, they turn it in, they go to the next meeting and fill out a new form and turn it in. But you're having folks look at data, analyze it, and then it gets reported out to a public meeting. So the audience component is huge. So I just think that's really, really cool. So that's the model. All the other slides are about that. So how are we driving to standards? How are we using engagement? And then how are we creating professional opportunities for teachers? For the kid component of this, that bottom piece is around how are we creating SEL. So when I'm delivering this to teachers, it's what's the learning environment that supports the stuff on top. And I don't know if that was 10 minutes, but it's probably in the neighborhood, right? Comments, questions. I know some of you have questions because you turned them in. So I'd love to engage in any of that. Enthusiasms.
I do. Well, I've sent some questions this morning.
Oh, cool.
And it's really, we get reports like the one Bruce just presented to us, with some information, some missing information. Ever since COVID, I joined the board probably just as you were starting work here. And I think from your standpoint, I would just love to hear, our scores don't look good. When you compare them to the state, they don't look good. And I just would love to get your opinion as to just how we're doing and what can we as a board, how can we better support the work that the district's trying to do?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important question, and Renee sent that to me this afternoon. The thing that I think is interesting is coherence is a big part of moving forward. And so I think what we're doing in terms of these three things it's nuts and bolts of what we should be doing in schools across the country. Your scores are absolutely not where I would expect them to be when I walk through classrooms. And so I've been kind of wondering about that too. And I had one idea that I think I've shared with the principals already, but and Joe for sure, is that the test that we do with iReady happens right before CASP. And so I have a suspicion there's a little bit of test fatigue going on, that we've given 3 rounds of tests and then they're kind of done with it and then they get the CASP test. So I think there might be a little bit false negative going on, but I'm not going to argue that that's the entire answer. I think that's one part of the answer. And your iReady scores correlate fairly well with the CASP scores. So there's not a ton that's going to be with that, but I think it would give you a better chance not giving iReady right before the CASP. But that's a testing context. That's not necessarily a diving in context. I think the work that you've started to do at the early elementary with the science of reading work and moving into U-Fly, is that the right term for it? I always want to say iFly because that seems like it would be better, but I think that's a really good, if you can stay the course and actually have good implementation of it, I think building those foundational skills with the kids from K2 is, I think, a lot of school districts are doing it and they're seeing some really great results. I know that in the school districts that I've partnered with in the Bay Area, they've got a year or 2 on that and they feel pretty good about it. So that's one thing I think is an important piece. I also think that a higher degree of focus on your English learners would be a really important thing for you to be thinking about. Your program is, I think, has not had as many kids as you have right now. So I think you're adding more and more kids and probably not as much infrastructure as you might need from an outside point of view. And I know it's super hard when you don't have a ton of kids to create programs that are really targeted to English learners. But I think that might be an area to think about. But I also think it'd be great to do a board study on that question because it's a huge one. It's probably not one for a 10-minute afternoon thing, but it's a really important and great question to be asking.
Can I jump on that question about the testing? I'm just thinking, reflecting on all of this, and in Bruce's slides, one of them, I forget which ELA it was, that 71% of the students exceeded standards in subjective reflection, which to me is huge. That's to get kids to reflect and really be thinking about what they're learning. And I've done your walkthroughs, and that's a lot of it is the reflection. How accurate do you think testing, all these tests, I don't really know, do they really reflect what kids are learning?
Oh, the CASP test and those kinds of tests?
Yeah.
Yeah, you get a partial. So the way I used to explain it back in the day is take a big old piece of art and then cover it all up. You guys with me so far? This might be a little bit much for the afternoon, this late. But cover it up. And then build a hole right here and you can see this much in. And then build a hole right here and you can see this much in. And if you do something, authentic, you get a bigger hole. But you don't really know until you have enough to see what's behind the thing that's covering it up.
Mm-hmm.
I know, I'm sorry, that was a little bit out there for an afternoon. Does it make sense, though?
It does, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for embracing our community and our kids.
Oh, I
It's been
really
huge.
appreciate being here. I really do. So thank you so much for your time and all your listening to all the good data that you're getting and all that good stuff. So thank you.
We really feel or hear the same things coming back from the staff, and as you're saying to us about them saying about you. So
Well, that's nice.
thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I really do. I'm going to do the thing.
Oh, good. I didn't want to be the only one.
I really appreciate being here.
Yeah.
So thank you. And I'm sorry I'm going to leave, but I'm going to drive back to Lake County.
Oh,
So-
gosh.
so Thank you so much.
Drive safe. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Happy, healthy. Stay healthy.
Thank you, Kelly.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate her coming and sharing. We know we have great staff, but to hear her input from all of her experience, to have her say, this group's really, working together and they're professionals when they're, they're tasked to these things. So I hope that folks will maybe hear that, look back and watch.
And I think that also reflects what the students were saying about Philadelphia, or what the parent, I guess, was saying about how they behaved. I mean, that's a reflection on the staff, directly. So,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, moving on to the next report, the athletic director position.
Hello, I'm Brianna. I'm the athletic director for the high school and the middle school. I was asked to come talk about the position becoming full-time as of last school year in August. So the addition of a full-time athletic director for both the high school and the middle school is beneficial for students, staff, and coaches and parents. With this position being full-time, it allows for one individual at both schools, which is beneficial and gives structure to the staff, students, and the community. If there are issues, questions, or concerns, they know who to reach out to. When having someone that is a full-time AD, this gives time to address issues almost immediately. For example, in the past, there was an issue with one specific sports team. I was able to pull the students and meet with them individually to try and get to the bottom of the problem and find a productive solution. This also gives more flexibility to parents when looking for times to meet. Because of not having other responsibilities on top of the athletic director responsibilities, it also gives me more time to respond to emails and phone calls in a timely manner. And especially during the spring sports season, there is a lot of last-minute changes due to the poor weather. There is also more time to apply for growth programs, scholarships, and league awards. Recently, I was able to apply for a pickleball growth program that would allow for the schools to gain pickleball supplies for either intramural and club use or even PE use. During this time, I've been able to implement coaching evaluations to help improve the experience for both coaches and students. In addition, I've implemented end-of-season meetings with coaches to find out how to help them be more successful and how to make the coach-athletic director and coach-student relationship more successful. Having a familiar face allows for me to make connections with students. Last year, I was able to meet with a student who had interest in playing sports in college, and I was able to help the student find information on who to contact and advice on how to move forward with that. With this position, there are many days of required travel, whether it be to out-of-town CMC meetings or playoff games.
Having a full-time AD prevents taking admin away from their school during the school day. And lastly, after speaking to the principals at both the high school and the middle school, they believe that having the AD being a full-time position allows for administration to focus on student achievement and behavior, and it also allows for them to give more time to support their staff during the school day. So if anybody has any questions.
So my question is, what do you need, like in the position? I don't know how we've come along this way without having a full-time AD. So what do you foresee needing in that position, since you don't have anyone to collaborate with other than the admin, I guess, but they're usually
Like needing
just to make you more successful in your role since it's new.
I think what I've received so far has been really beneficial, whether it be from people who have done it in the past or reaching out to current ADs at other schools. The community, like the athletic director community, is actually really helpful. They all are trying to help each other, so that's been really beneficial for me.
So the networking has worked.
Yes.
So this isn't a question per se about the full-time position, but just about athletics, I guess, in general. That's all right. And if you don't have answers now, that's okay. But I've been hearing a little bit of rumbling about not having enough space for practices and things like that. And so I guess the question is how can we help make sure that for the kids that are interested in sports, whether it's a new team or an ongoing team, how can we help better prioritize and make sure that everyone has the space they need?
Space is a really big issue, especially when it gets to the winter sports, because a lot of them actually all of them are indoors. So there's only so much time between the end of the school day and 9:30 at night. Unfortunately, I don't have a solution at this time, but that is a big issue, because teams are only getting like an hour to an hour and a half of practice time, and that's pushing them all the way to 9:30 at night. So.
Okay. Well, I guess as time goes on, let us know how
Yes.
we can help, if we can help improve that at all. And then I had another question. I've talked to Joe about this several times, and this is from my parent side of things. Late night transportation. Sometimes teams get back at 1, 2 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So is that, I guess there's nothing really we can really do because of our location to prevent that? I mean, is there any time where a team would be like, we're not going to leave at 1 in the morning and get home at 3? Like, is there any point where we could just, I don't know, house them, or I don't know, put them up at a school? Or there's been some really, really late night arrivals that make parents pretty nervous.
I'm not sure about the housing part, but what we've done this year to help accommodate, we've had a few playoff games where they've traveled very far, and the playoff games are set by the CIF and NCS. So we've given them the first period and advisory off so they can at least get a few good hours of sleep and then come in
Next day.
rested for the rest of the school day.
Okay.
So were you talking about league games or playoff games?
League.
League games.
It's more the drivers driving those roads at 1, 2 in the morning. It just can't be easy for anybody.
Well, luckily with league, we usually don't get home that late. But with the playoff games, that's when it was like 2, I think even maybe 3 o'clock in the morning for some people.
Yeah.
But for league games, it's typically they're returned by 11:30, midnight. Football, since they are a later game, they do get home
Right.
later. But the nice thing with that is it's one bus driver, so they're all together. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and with the playoffs, I just feel like it's a fundraiser for NCIF or CIF or whoever they are, because we're all going. So we have to keep pushing. Like, we have to advocate that we either need to get a neutral gym. So if we are over, everyone should be home by midnight. I mean, because, and the closer we are to our home, the more money they'll make, because we'll have fans that will go. But if we're going to go 4 hours and have to be back,
Well, it
in
doesn't
one
have to be
day,
at 7 o'clock.
and it doesn't have to be 7
Yeah.
o'clock. So they need to, these folks that are making the uppers, they need to escort us home one night and
See what it's like.
it's just not humane. I mean, people aren't saying, good luck, have a good trip. They're like, I hope you get back okay. Like, why aren't you spending the night? I mean, it's just not reasonable, and it's not good for the carbon. I mean, it's goofy, because it's really a fundraiser. It's not prestigious anymore because, we're seated at 12 and we're going. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So anyway, but we all have to advocate. It's not just your job, but
Right.
No, we can definitely reach
Yeah.
out and try and make some
Make
changes.
it so that it's,
Fair.
well, just more humane. I mean, it's just not, I mean, you shouldn't have someone from Del Norte going down to Marin County. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So, and I get the seating, that complicates things, but they could pick a neutral gym. You just don't get your home advantage.
So if there are opportunities for us to advocate, you'll let Joe know, or
Yes.
really, 'cause, you know, if
Well,
they-
and things have changed a lot, like you brought that up a couple meetings ago, and the other thing I've noticed, when I was teaching during basketball season, because that's where we are now, one Tuesday, girls were home, Friday, boys were home, right? That works, and then they would switch. And now, there's all these 4 sets. And I feel like the kids are missing a lot of school, and I don't know if there's a reason, if it's reffing, if it's transportation, but then they took 4 vans. I mean, I don't know, it's not really this discussion, but
Yeah, I can, but so the 4 sets this year, we had a strange schedule for basketball because there were 9 teams in our league. So in order to not have the league season start, I think it was gonna be like 2 weeks after the first practice, they went to a different schedule. But with that different schedule, it would have us only playing some teams once, or it would have our girls traveling to, I think it was St. Helena twice. So in order to make it fair, we did 4 sets where we all go to St. Helena one day and then we all stay in Fort Bragg playing St. Helena the other day. So hopefully next year we won't have as many 4 sets.
because it just shocks me how much school they're missing, and then we got home at midnight. So anyway, it's good to know that's only a short term, because I don't remember it being like that before. It just seems odd, but.
Middle school, but not high school.
Yeah. So I guess what you're telling us is that this is really an important position, and it needs to stay, and it's a good use of funds, and, I mean, I guess you would say that, but maybe.
I would say that.
Maybe, yeah.
I'll come. I don't think I could have done it without Brianna. I mean, I did the job when I was an assistant principal, and I think I calculated how many hours I spent from August to December, and it was 180 something extra hours, and I got tired of keeping the tally. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. It's been a lifesaver. So there's no way that I could do what I do and be in classes without Brianna. I mean, I think she has saved me and probably my marriage too. So.
Well, and I really like the idea of hearing from you that you're meeting with students and things, because that's a huge piece that you guys didn't have time to do when you're doing 2 or 3 other jobs. So there are people, so they have things to say. So and I love that you got pickleball. That seems to be, I haven't tried it yet, but that's a big deal. So that's exciting.
Yeah, we're hoping that we get selected. It was like I think a 4-week wait, and we're getting close to that window. So hopefully we'll hear soon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Alt Ed Principal Position Report.
Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Aldridge. I was asked to do this, so I just kind of put together a slideshow. I wasn't entirely sure what everybody was hoping to see, so I put together a slideshow that represents the basic duties that I'm doing in my current role. My role includes the Alt Ed principal position, and I also coordinate the Community Schools Grant and the Community Engagement Initiative that are district-wide grants. The Alt Ed principal position has all the, the typical duties that a principal would do. I supervise certificated and classified staff. There are 4 different schools there, and so sometimes that's a little extra. For example, I get to do 3 SART cards when everybody else gets to do 1, that sort of thing. Curriculum and instruction, I wish I was able to spend a little bit more time there. Supervision and discipline, I spend a great deal of time on. Attendance follow-up, I wish I had a little bit more time for that, but of course I spend time on all these things. Facilities, transfers, enrollment, school resources, community partners, relationships, compliance items, and kind of conferring with California Department of Ed. So just your basic principal sort of duties. And then on the next slide, coordinating the California Community Schools Partnership Planning Grant. Some of the things that we're doing there, we're in year 1 of planning with this grant, and a key thing that we're doing is working on a comprehensive community assets and needs assessment. So kind of some of the aims there include coordinating new and existing services, establishing parenting supports, and organizing and presenting professional development for staff. We're working toward connecting with community partners to align services with common vision. Something that we have here that's amazing in Fort Bragg is our community partnerships are very well established. We have a lot of groups that are very integral in supporting our schools. So kind of working together to organize that so everybody knows what's available in terms of supports. I collaborate with CDE and colleagues across the state to ensure compliance with grant requirements. I attend STAC, which is state level virtual meetings monthly with follow-up requirements. And then I attend RTAC virtual meetings twice a month to collaborate with regional colleagues. And those are pretty lengthy. I'd say the RTACs are an hour and a half, I think, and the STACs are an hour and a half. Share information and conduct staff development with ADCO. We'll be working on some things with in terms of gathering input, and then assisting with grant writing for the implementation grant, which is due in February early. And then I've done a lot more actually with the community engagement initiative. So that is kind of a companion grant to the California Community Schools Grant, and the aim of that grant is to kind of structure and support many of those community engagement things that will feed our compliance with the California Community Schools Grant. And this grant is really neat in that it requires you to pull a team together, and it's funded on each meeting that you attend. So it's a $70,000 a year grant. And in order to get that money, I have to bring my team to the things. And so they pay out, I think, $8,700 every time I bring a team to do something. So that's been neat. It's been really great to get together. I have community partners on that grant. I have parents, students, and staff. So I had to recruit that team, and then we attend 8 peer leading and learning network team meetings. Some of them are virtual and some of them are in person. So 3 3-hour virtual meetings with some on-site follow-up. Most of them have asynchronous work where I gather the team together again and we do some additional things. And then 4 full-day off-site convenings. I coordinate the asynchronous, I guess, is 8 sessions at about 2 hours apiece. And then establishing and overseeing the budget, which has been interesting because it's an unrestricted fund, and the intent is to support the work. And so right now we're looking at potentially paying a small stipend to those members who have stepped up, because it's a rather intensive time commitment. The first in-person convening that we had was directly after the Philadelphia trip in San Francisco, and it was really a great experience. And so I'm looking forward very much to how the Community Engagement Initiative is going to contribute to our success with the California Community Schools Grant. And then I think there's one more slide. Highlights. Oh, I don't even know if I can see this. So I figured, since you're asking about my job, highlights. So in terms of the alternative ed sites, teachers are working in professional learning community teams, and they've established scope and sequence for their Tuesday, Thursday work. That's the work around Leaving to Learn. It's around helping kids build the skills to be able to engage effectively in internships. They research areas of interest, they conduct informational calls, they do informational interviews, and then they hopefully get internships. And so that's the aim of that was for our staff to collectively decide on what do we want students to know. And they've really put together some very cool curriculum with that I'm excited about. Also with Alt Ed, we've been doing professional development for high impact student engagement strategies. So they they have not had the opportunity to work with Kelly Smith. Those areas are also a part of my background, so we've been doing a little bit of work with student engagement strategies. And then other highlights, student leaders attended the Big Picture Learning Conference in Philadelphia. Thank you, it was amazing. District-wide transfer process, we adjusted that to fit recent California Department of Ed recommendations. And we were recommended for California Continuation Education's Model of Excellence for California Community Day School for Lighthouse. So we're very excited to hopefully go accept that award in April for the work that we're doing at the school. It was a pretty rigorous process with a written application and then a site visit. And the gentleman wasn't able to come, so I just carried him around on Zoom. But it included multiple focus groups, and the best part was when he talked to our students, because they said that if more schools were like us, then more kids would be successful, and that was a pretty cool thing to hear kids say. Other highlights with the community schools planning grant. I've been collaborating with Joe in terms of the needs assessment there. We'll be doing some PD with ADCO scheduled this month, and then initial work on the application for the implementation grant. And then with the Community Engagement Initiative, our team is great. I mean, they show up, which is fantastic, because a lot of other districts are not having that success. And you don't get the $8,700 if your team doesn't show up. So we're pretty happy that they show up and they're enthusiastic. Our team has met all the criteria for continued funding, and we're working on a stipend structure for them currently, and we're working on doing a rigorous needs and assets analysis that will then hopefully help with the one that we need for the community schools grant. I think there's one final slide. I don't know if you wanted recommendations, but here they are. I think I would say that the principalship of the Alt Ed site is definitely a full-time job. It takes well beyond the hours that a full-time job would take. So I know we're looking into writing in funding for a full-time community schools coordinator in the coming years. It seems to me at most of the meetings that I've gone to that the model generally is having someone be dedicated to that position. And I would think that that person could also coordinate the CEI, because they kind of go together. And the CEI is just 2 years long, whereas the community schools partnership is longer. So, and I just threw in there, consider funding an additional staff member as a student liaison to assist with student supervision and support throughout the day. I threw that in there, I can't help myself, hoping to put that kind of idea into the community schools grant, because as the only administrator with feet on the ground at the site, if I step away into my office or I go off to a meeting, then the supervision is not there. Questions?
Any questions?
Sounds like you've got a full plate.
Do.
And maybe two.
Yeah, but it's been awesome. I love it. Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Kristen.
right, thank you. Okay, next up is COVID funding update.
The board had requested an update, can you hear me? Okay, couldn't tell if it was working or not. On where we were with our COVID funding. And so I put this together. It's similar to the one I gave you almost a year ago. But the first page has the only two resources that have any funds left to spend, and those have to be spent by September of 2024. most of the bulk of it is going to be for the window projects. We may have a bit left over from that as we're getting close to winding that up, and so we may be able to do something else with some of the rest of it. The rest of it, I tried to give you a little more detail on what some of the items were that were spent on, because a couple of things you asked me had happened 3 years before, and I didn't remember exactly what it was. So I put in a little more explanation for that. But as you can see, all of the rest of it has been spent by the dates they had to be spent. And there was something else. What was it I was going to mention? Oh, that the grand total of all of those resources was over $11 million. And we have about 1.6 left that to spend on these last few projects. So did you have any questions on any of the items?
Is anyone using the shade structures?
Oh.
Oh, underneath?
Yeah.
Gotcha, they're not in there with you.
Oh.
So I just had one question and one comment. First, I can't imagine, well, I can't imagine because we've kind of been there a little bit with you through the process, but the amount of detail and work this has been administering these funds. So thank you for all of that. I know it's been very, very stressful. So thank you. And the second question I have is a lot of the things that we've been funding with COVID funds that are somewhat ongoing, obviously are going to be going away. And so, we don't need to go, at least I don't feel the need to do this right now, but I think at some point we need to kind of have a discussion about how we're going to fund, what we're going to fund, how we're going to fund them moving forward. I assume starting with the 24-25 school year, and that's just an assumption, I don't really know.
Probably, I've been saying for 3 years that
Yes.
we've been squirreling away other funds while we're using these. So we'll be able to maintain the things that have the greatest efficacy for a period of time. But we're going to have to drill down into what that is. What are the things that we've been doing that are proving the most effective?
Okay. And I assume you'll bring that to us at the right time. Because you say it's funded, Joe will bring it to us at the right time. I meant yes.
Yes.
Okay. Staff, yes.
And I don't know if now's the time, because as I've mentioned several times, things are slow moving in education. But if we need to come up with some kind of rubric or how we're going to present these things as to, athletic director, Avid, we've heard from them, in-town transportation, all these things that we've kind of brought back, and I don't know if those are 3 good examples, but anyway, and how we're going to kind of rate them. At one time, we made a list when cuts are coming, and I don't know. I want it to be very clear and data-driven and focused, and not like all of a sudden it's thrown at us and we have to decide. And anyway, so
Absolutely.
the sooner the better, and however we can help, and
Yeah. Well, and just looking over the things that are really ongoing expenditures here, we're looking at kind of our mental health services, which we built into the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. Did I do that in the right order? I don't know. It's some combination of those words. To continue at least through 26, 27, I believe, with that. So, I mean, we're the big ideas that we know have been effective. We are already, as the board, you've kind of already taken some action to move that forward. I think it's going to be really our instructional aids, I think, was probably the biggest expansion that we had as far as on the human resources side of things. So we're going to have to look at effectively making sure that they're being used effectively in the best places within the district. So that's probably going to be the biggest conversation with our site administrators around those pieces. And then also, hearing Kelly's recommendations earlier, as well as echoed through other folks around expanding services for our English learners, and kind of looking how that can be different without becoming a huge burden on our budget as well. So get to do some creative things. But I think
and we're
that
in an LCAP cycle too, so it seems like good
Yes.
timing.
perfect time to look at those things, for sure.
And summer school?
Summer school will be funded through the ELOP funds that we have, so I
Okay.
feel like we can continue that. We're still waiting. Flockworks will be here next month to kind of provide an update, and I'll meet with them before that point so that we can really dive into budget in greater detail as well. So.
All right, any other questions for Wendy? Okay, moving on to superintendent report.
Right. So, if you have looked at the news at all, that's any sort of local news, the big news was that the governor yesterday released the January governor's budget proposal. What we saw there, I'll let Wendy maybe go into further detail, but you know, the big thing was not huge cuts, so that was refreshing. So
Yeah, they did drop the COLA anticipation from 1% to 0.79%. So basically flat funding. The concerning thing is looking at the details of what they're doing. They're drawing down reserves by $13 billion. They're funding reductions without cuts somehow. Borrowing, funding delays, funding shifts, deferrals to payroll and UC system. The almost $6 billion from the public school stabilization account. So those are concerning things that, okay, you do this once, and where do you have it to go from again? Everybody is, you know, kind of breathing a hedged sigh of relief about education not taking any big cuts, but we have to see how these things are going to hold up. On the bright side, the first interim report, there was a bit of an omission on my part. I was cramming to get everything together, and I, you know, double checked that the numbers rolled over correctly. But I forgot to put some of the beginning balances into the budget side. So we're actually about $1.5 million better off than we thought last month, and I'll show you that with the I'll do a budget to actuals next month, and then second interim will be in March. So you'll see all of those changes. So the kind of dribbling off here will, you know, come back there some. So it's the 3 years out actually looks slightly better as far as the bottom line goes. We're still deficit spending by a huge amount in those 2 out years. So again, we want to keep an eye on what the state's going to be doing.
thank you, Wendy. Moving on to facilities, we met with the architect earlier today to discuss renovations to our classrooms at Dana Gray and at the middle school. I know this has been a conversation for, I think you did a walk 2 years?
The SDC rooms.
Yeah.
We did a walkthrough in the spring of 2022 to bring the one in from the portables and make the one at the middle school more user-friendly.
So what we're looking at right now is we're estimating a cost for that after the conversations today around $1 million to make those moves, which is, I think, probably what we were expecting. It's in that same ballpark. So we'll get a little bit more information on that and bring that before you before we get too far down that. But we just wanted to make you aware there. We're also looking at installing a couple of chargers in our bus barn to support new electric buses. We've got electric buses that are sitting at A to Z Bus Sales, but we can't take delivery until we have a way to charge them. And so there's some difficulty with the woodworking school there, the college has the deed to that portion of the land, and the transformer's kind of on the other side of that. So we have to get an easement from them to be able to trench through to run more power to the bus barn. Strangely enough, when they put the power in, they didn't think about charging 6 electric buses all at the same time. So that'll be coming, but we do have enough current right now to be able to put in 2 to 3 chargers, so our electricians are figuring that piece out. We also have installed new freezers at each of the comprehensive sites. So if you have been by certain areas, you'll go, oh, that's new. Especially, I think it's very, very much front and center out at Redwood. If you're coming from the parking lot, you can see there. But you know, Pilar worked really, really hard on this, so we really appreciate all the work that she put into it. She said instantly it's better for her staff that they're not, you know, they have more on-site storage, so we're not finding things in the back of the freezer because it just all gets buried or whatnot. So, around school safety, I know this is a big topic that we've talked about. Our school safety committee is being formed. We're waiting for representatives from each of the bargaining units, so I've reached out to both of them. We'll get some dates scheduled as soon as we know who all our players are. We do have our 2 site administrators identified and 2 board members for the committee. So we've also received 9 AEDs over the winter break, so we have the brackets to get those installed. We've got 3 AEDs that Bruce went ahead and bought new batteries for, so that brings us up to 12 AEDs in the district. So that's really impressive for a district our size, I think. Each school site in the DO will have them. There'll also be some units for our athletics programs. Of course, here at the high school, we've got them in multiple locations just because of the size of the campus and how many folks are here and that kind of thing. But I think this will allow us to have kind of two floaters for our athletic program. So we're hoping that eventually they can go into the med bag and just be a part of things that travel with them. It's also started the conversation of should we have these on buses? And so Barry's kind of started that conversation to say, gee, that might be the reality of, you know, there might be an emergency on a bus somewhere and we might need that, especially with the travel to sporting events and things like that. Yes. So we're looking forward to having them up and running. They're amazingly easy to use, and unfortunately we've had some practice in them. So we're also working to update our classroom emergency kits. So there were some supplies that were recommended by the Fort Bragg PD, so we're getting those ordered. And so that each room will have a little trauma kit that's in there, so it'll have a tourniquet, gauze, and wound seal. Hate to think of those things, but it's speaking to the PD, they said those are the things that help save lives in those rooms if there ever were an emergency. I hope that we buy them and never have to look at them again. But
Joe, real quick question about the AEDs. So all staff are trained? I know they're very easy to use.
So that hasn't necessarily been a part of the training yet. So we'll bring something around once we kind of get them in place. It is a part of the first aid training that all of our coaches go through and those folks. But I think that we could probably do a quick in-service on them, and it'd be, you know, point them to a 10-minute video that shows them pretty easily how to use them. The nice part is as soon as you crack it open, it starts talking to you and tells you, do this, do this, do this. You know,
but
so.
in this, and I'm dealing with this, not personally with this issue, but, you know, insurance. Like if someone's using it and someone's touching the person by, like, is there any, I know that we're not liable according to the first aid training, because our intent is to help. But as far as the school district is, how much liability is there?
I think it's fairly minimal for us. And I think given the state mandating that these be in place for athletics and things like that, that we have a good bit of backing from the state to through the courts and whatnot to support that it falls into the Good Samaritan part of the laws. So I think that limits our liability to a decent amount. The one thing that, in speaking with some folks around these, that we do want to keep in mind with the AEDs is to just keep them current. These that we purchased have a 7-year battery, so I don't anticipate that there'll be any issues with them for 7 years. They stay under warranty for that time too, so if anything does happen to them in that time, we call the manufacturer, they send out a new battery or whatever for it. So they say we just want to keep them under warranty and with current batteries, and if we do that, then our liability is very limited.
I was told to once a year just turn them on, make sure that they.
Oh, they're a part. There's actually a inspection checklist that basically they go around once a month and make sure that they're as a part of, you know, because they have to inspect our fire extinguishers and all that kind of thing. So it's just a part of that inspection cycle. So All right. Moving on to talk about a little bit more about curriculum. We have scheduled some meetings at Redwood to support the use of Universal Design for Learning in the coming school year. So I'm really excited to, they're kind of going to be happening monthly through the rest of the year to really help staff start processing that and think about how we can implement. With any big shift like this, we have to start small and start with, what's the one thing you can control and you'll have good outcomes, and then build from there. And so having some of those conversations is going to be really fun. I've also been recruiting staff that are interested in teaching in a dual language immersion class next year as a pilot. So I think I might have identified someone who's interested in starting a kindergarten class next year to do that. And so we'll kind of figure out what are some of the ins and outs in our community and what does that look like, and then start to build that out so that the following year we can add on a first grade class and maybe more than that, but certainly keep building that program as those kiddos kind of come through. So we have a K-5 dual language immersion option for our students in our community. And then we're also starting our science pilot at Dana Gray and Redwood, and the county office has really helped us in getting going with that. And so we'll get hopefully a recommendation to you in the spring that we can then purchase and get going. And then finally in LCAP, I've met with site councils at Dana Gray and the middle school. I've met with Dana Gray Parents Club, and then the staff at the middle school in Dana Gray. We have some upcoming community and parent input meetings that'll be held 5:30 on February 5th and 15th in this very room. Content will not be different between the two, so we tried to pick different days of the week so it maybe helped accommodate for folks' schedules that way. And hopefully in the next week or two, we'll be sending out our surveys. They're already live, I think, for parents and staff. Need one more ADCO with the admin just to make sure if we want to break them out by school, and if there are any questions that they would like to add that are site specific, we can do that so that that's meaningful to them too, and we don't have to ask kids to complete multiple surveys to get this information. So.
Great. I would the meetings on the 5th and the 15th, if we can get those out multiple times on Parent Square and
yes.
with lots of notice, that'd be awesome.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions for you?
Can people appear virtually, or does it have to be in person?
For the 5th and 15th, I don't know that we thought about virtual, but that might be something that we can add in for sure. I don't see any reason why we couldn't just, get our technology. Yeah.
It seemed like we had more parent input that way.
Yeah.
Sure.
Definitely.
I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a report from the California Schools Employee Association.
I did not receive anything. No.
And how about the Fort Bragg District Teachers Association?
Nope, but they said that they would be here next month. So.
All right. So, moving on to the consent calendars. Everyone okay to keep going? It's been a long report.
Take a quick step out. So.
Everyone's gonna go. All right. So Kathy, if you want to read off the consent calendar items.
Sure. Pull it up here, so is the list longer on here? No, it's not. Okay. All right. Agenda consent items, warrants, minutes, and I guess I would have. Do you want me to click on them and they're not on here?
Sure.
Do you want me to read them? I have to go in.
It's okay. It's
Okay.
November.
Warrants minute, next time I'll write them out.
Yeah, no worries.
So I know the warrants are from December, the month of 1st through the 31st. The minutes are from 11/9 and 12/11. And then the personnel action forms and contracts, and the Williams quarterly report for the second quarter.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Consent calendar?
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Perfect, thank you. All right, moving on to 10.1, comprehensive school safety plans. You want to wait a second for Joe to get back? Okay.
Support, want to take a 5-minute break?
Sure. 2-minute break? Whatever you
Let's
do.
do that.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
So we'll come back at 8:03?
Sure. Let's 5 minutes. 7:53. Is that good? Enough time?
Yep.
Okay.
right.
Renee, should we wait for Renee?
Oh.
I don't know, Joe, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can go
Okay.
ahead and get
Okay.
going with this. So this year, for our comprehensive school safety plans, we have been working with a new company called I Am Ready. I can't say that my administrators really loved the process. I didn't either. So we got something out of this that gives us a compliant safety plan that we will use to inform our safety planning in the future. But I don't know if we will continue to work with I Am Ready in the future, just because I felt like it ended up being more of all of our time involved in the process for something that we already felt generally it was supposed to help us and make it easier, and I don't know that it achieved either of those goals. So with that caveat there, our principals did a really good job of going back through those plans and trying to bring as much of it in, but they didn't even share it with us in a really easy to manipulate format or anything. It was a frustrating process. So I've shared that information as MCOE did purchase this service for us, and so I'm really trying to say, while we may not use it, I don't know that you should pay for it in an ongoing sort of fashion. If you can get your money back, maybe let's do that. So with that qualifier, again, all of our principals did have the opportunity to go through their school safety plans at their site levels, really go and make sure that they were, generally up to speed on everything that's in there. I think that they did an excellent job seeing what came in to the end product. I think they did a good job at cleaning up some of the mistakes that somebody was paying a company to do. So the school safety plans have to be in place by March 1st of each year. We're obviously meeting that window. It is for the entire year, though. What I really think what we'll concentrate on with our school safety committee is to try to get the emergency operations plan, which is really the meat of things for these safety plans that says, there's an earthquake, this is our procedure, and then try to get something for classrooms that's just the quick reference to that says, there was an earthquake. Let me open the earthquake and go, what's our next step out now that we've done the duck and cover and the pieces that we know the immediate emergency response, and then where do we go from here? So there is this will feed into the vision of the larger plan, which I really think we already have those procedures in place, so I don't want the public out there listening to think that those are not in place, but we'll continue to refine those, look at if there are other areas we need to add, and continue to work on safety. It's always an ongoing process for us. So.
Do you want to go? You have stuff? So I actually appreciated, I don't mind paper, because I feel like if you were new to the district or you were a new parent, everything you need to know is in there. I mean, in the sense of you don't have to go hunting and pecking for the policy about how the process works, and you can see, right there. So I actually think that part is really helpful, because if you have someone that says, why are you doing that, or this, it's there. You've got one document and it has the dashboard pieces in it a little bit, that you have the ed data, which I appreciated. But it was kind of nice at middle school. She showed what you saw as an administrator, where I wish I could see that version, because you could see what you could customize it. So there were a number that had been customized or blank. So it would be nice to have, I guess, this plan you're talking about, because if you were a substitute teacher, it'd be nice to have, go to page 83, and this is your responsibility. If something goes down today, how is that happening now? I just feel like from a substitute perspective, this document isn't helpful. You probably have the backpack.
So we now at Dana Gray have substitute binders, and every teacher has the exact same looking binder. So no matter what classroom I'm in, I know what it looks like. And one of the things that is in there is all of the fire drill, lockdown, earthquake procedures in a special section in that. So that's the most important thing that I could say from a substitute's point of view is what do I do if? Those are the big four that are included in the substitute binders. I'm sure it's the same way with the teachers. They include that in their sub-plans.
So that, I would like to have seen that in this.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of having those four, I mean, not that you want to give any trade secrets, you know, you want to keep that safe. You know, you don't want to have something go down to give procedures that would get in the way of keeping kids safe. But that may be in the assess and response procedure. And there was PBIS was there was supposed to be a blurb in, and some of them were blank, and I know that's happening at sites. And then they also were missing the command center, and I know that's probably in your binder. So it would be nice to have those uplifted in this huge document. So then you know, like page 83 really has our customized what we're practicing. Because the other one was just more defining what those other modes of safety. And then a couple of the vision and missions didn't match. We had a couple of schools that they had their own vision and mission, so that was just a comment. And then, of course, the elementary schools didn't have the Melanie Law on how do you respond to the opiate overdoses and some other data points. So I actually didn't think it was terrible, but it just to know what we're really doing.
For sure.
They're long though.
Yeah.
Times 5, or if you count everyone from
198. Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe that's something we can look at when we start the safety committee, is that, you know, how we've kind of scaled down for to have an LCAT cheat sheet or diagram, that maybe we could do that for each site. That would be a quick reference guide for families, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Because Diana appreciates
The depth.
the information, but in reality, I don't think there's a lot of people that, even if you're a parent coming to this, you're trying to decide if you're going to move to Mendocino or Fort Bragg, I'm not even sure they're going to read 207 pages.
Not the safety plan.
Right. But even though there's lots of good stuff in there, but
Or if
anyway,
you're the
so
parent with
these
3
are just
kids.
things that usable documents. Again, adding more information for the public, because I know that was one thing from our table discussion we did after the incident we had last year, that to put some things out in the August, Aries registration thing. So maybe if some kind of one-page, nice chart summary.
What to expect.
Yeah. So, things
Good
we're
idea.
learning as we always try to get better.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Looking through these plans, there are some missing information that I think would be pretty important. Opioid overdose protocols, missing individual safety plans, for individual schools. I don't know all of them. We just have one up at the moment. But it may be good before we submit them to the state to kind of, I know they've been a pain and they're horrible to work with. But if we're going to do it, we might as well complete them as much as we can. One area I noticed is that it seems like for drills, they all list past drills. It seems like 2023 had a lot less drills than 2022.
Yeah,
for
5.
Right.
So I don't know, again.
Or they weren't listed.
Yeah, or they, whatever.
I mean,
So,
we know it's happening, but.
It's just, that's where my red flag comes up. I want to make sure that there are the drills, and then this may be more of a, anything but tabletop exercises. Not where we're involving students and scaring them, but like we're sitting around, appropriate people sitting around a table being, okay, there's an active shooter, or hey, there's an earthquake. Who's doing what? Who's making this call? Who's communicating with that? And we did them a lot with the city, and they're very effective because you really get to think through what your role would be without having to act it out.
Right.
And so I thought those were really helpful. And again, just making sure we're doing all the drills and stuff.
Yeah, and the drills piece, again, that was a whole separate worksheet that they had as a part of this. So, and many were submitted in the fall, so it may be some of the planned ones, but may not be every single one that happens. I can tell you at our elementaries, we have fire drills are every month. At the middle and high school, we have to have them each semester, so it's when they change classes, basically. We try to make sure we have an earthquake drill. Don't know that we haven't done a district-wide lockdown drill so far this year, so that's something. April, but yes. So, so that's that's something we can work with our admin to kind of figure out. And then, yes, I agree, the tabletop drills would be important, but I think I want to get the emergency operations plan, get that back before the committee and kind of bring that forward, because that's really what we're going to put into play in those situations. So.
And as you give the county feedback on this, you know, there were, when we went to the conference, there were some examples we got of counties that are actually doing some really great work with their emergency operations.
Yes.
Know what Sweetwater is using.
Yeah. Well, and I've took those suggestions I was reading over the break from the, is it Santa Cruz? I can't.
San Mateo.
San Mateo, and it was one of the sands. So I have that printed out to as kind of a nice format to kind of work things into, and the copy of the book that you shared with me with the you know, for the younger kids, how not to scare them with intruder drills and that kind of thing. So I thought that was really, really good.
Well, and I wondered about, I mean, comprehensive school safety plans, and I appreciated reading the action plans, but the action plans weren't really about school safety. So it's kind of a misnomer, odd compilation of interesting but disparate information.
And rather compliance driven.
Okay.
I think is really, as I read through, it was really about, we check this box off.
Right.
So here's the board policy for that or whatnot. So
Yeah.
yes.
Because as a parent, like what Kathy was saying, I would want to go in and see what's going to happen if this occurs.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Yeah, and why can I
Well,
not
and
get to
parent,
the office
right.
when
Right.
there's a lot, you know, I mean, that was the
Exactly.
big thing. It's
What
just to
to
let
expect.
parents know, you are not gonna get a person to answer the phone when there's an emergency.
This
Right.
is why.
Right,
Yeah.
so. They don't care what the board policy is.
Right.
No.
You just wanna know
Not
what.
enough.
That is not what they're looking
Right.
for.
No.
Yes.
But I did appreciate the action plans. Thank you.
All right, so I believe we are, is there any public comment on this? Okay. And we're approving all the plans as a whole, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I will, and I understanding that this is not, board approval is not required by law?
Right.
just
It's school
recommended by-
site council approval has to happen for these. So we do it just because I think it's a good practice. And
Just like, okay.
yes.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the comprehensive school safety plans.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, then roll call.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Munoz?
Yes.
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
Trustee Makla?
Yes.
And Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
All right, moving on to item 10.2, the school accountability report card for Redwood Elementary.
Okay, so I'll give my spiel about SARCs as an overview for all of these, and we do have our principals here who can answer any questions. Unfortunately, Lundy was not able to be here tonight. But our school accountability report cards, the SARCs, have data in them from the state, because I know last year when we brought them before you, they did not. So that has been populated earlier this year than it was last year. So I was a little excited about that this week to come in and go, ooh, they have data in them. They're not just a bunch of blank boxes that I need to bring forward. So,
Well, unfortunately, it wasn't quite early enough
Yeah.
because I went through
Yeah,
them
no,
all
I didn't have
before
time to go through
the
it.
CASP data was in there and I didn't have time.
I'm so
I mean,
sorry.
It's
Yeah,
not
it's
your,
a,
I mean, it's just life,
Well,
but
and the other hard part is that I went back and it's changed so much every year, and we've always approved a non-populated, so I couldn't even compare, like, where are we at this, that, and the other thing. So it was super frustrating, because most schools had them on their site, but then I had to go, you know, looking, but then I didn't have this one. So it's like, this is so not meaningful.
it's a really frustrating process, and it's interesting because it's really a remnant from No Child Left Behind. It was something that came about during that time, and I don't know that they've really looked at it to say, are we moving through this the way that we should? Some of the data comes from last year, some of it's from this year, and you know, there's this. It's just kind of a disjointed sort of approach to reporting out on school progress. I think the California School Dashboard does a better job of showing some of these same ideas, but in a more graphic sense, in a very current way. So,
Because that's what
There-
was hard, is that each year the format was different, so you couldn't really compare, like you're comparing, but then it's, that category wasn't there last year, and it's like,
Yes.
well, I would like to have known what, you know, so it is frustrating.
yes, yeah, it's a pretty frustrating process too, for the time that the site admin put into this, to know the folks in this room are probably make up 90% of who are ever going to actually sit down, review, and spend a lot of time with this. So that's, it's not a product that has an audience that's very broad or diverse.
Well, I have to hope people coming into town want to look at it, and maybe staff coming into town.
And I did, when we were at the Weaverville tournament, I looked up the other
I did-
schools
well, so
that
do
we
I.
were there. So, I mean, people do look at, I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't read the whole thing, but I found that.
The enrollment.
This really cool school had had an EMT program, anyway, but
Mhm.
I was really looking for demographics and numbers of students and stuff to see comparative to our school, but, you know, they do get looked at.
Mhm. If you're a data junkie.
Yes.
So I just noticed on this one, page 13, again, this gets submitted to the state, right? So it should be accurate. It just says that the safety plan was approved in December of 2023. So should not change that.
Okay.
And I noticed there's no physical fitness test results for Riverville. Do they not do?
They do not. It's grades 5, 7, and 9.
Was that, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna get there fast enough, but was that when it was done by site council?
I'm sure.
Oh, okay. Because I think I don't know which date, if it's our approval date or if that was site council's, because I went
This
to
is by
Dana
school
Gray
board.
and was-
Oh, and that was speaking of the school safety plan, so we'll make that change. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments about any public comment on the Redwood Sark?
There's no public comment.
I do think the time that, I don't know how much time you guys have to spend on them, but I do like getting lots of things in one place, so it is.
It's informative
yeah.
when you don't, when you aren't at the school.
Trustee Makla.
Yes.
Trustee Schneider.
Yes.
Trustee Munoz.
Yes.
Trustee Paley.
Yes.
And Trustee Babcock.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Moving on to 10.3, the school accountability report card for Dana Gray.
I'm Jamie Alexander. I'm the principal at Dana Gray. I have to say, one of the reasons that the school accountability report card is easier to write than the safety plan is that it's through the DTS program, and it definitely leads you through and lets you say things in purple the state fills in, things in orange you fill in. So it's much more straightforward for the things that we're actually supposed to be including narratives and data. One correction I do have to mind though, on the FIT page, part of the FIT report was that there is a GCFI plug that needed to be replaced in room 31, and there isn't a plug next to the sink in room 31. There is one on the same wall, but it's up high. So we're trying to get to the bottom of what they were talking about there. So I just went in and looked at that yesterday because I don't know of any classrooms that has a plug right next to a sink, because that sounds really dangerous. But there isn't one, so we're not worried about it. Does anyone have any other questions on Dana Gray's SARC? On a hush
Comment on Dana Gray's SARC.
There's no public comment.
I'll entertain a motion.
What?
I'll move to approve item 10.3, the school accountability report card for Dana Gray.
A second.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Trustee Munoz.
Yes.
Trustee Schneider.
Yes.
Trustee Makla.
Yes.
Trustee Babcock.
Yes.
And Trustee Paley.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
All right, 10.4, the school accountability report card for fourth graders.
Laura Vieira, Fort Bragg Middle School, here to present the SARC. Just as Jamie said, super fun exercise. Site Council approved it with all of the items that were not populated yet by CDE. And actually, they just got populated, I think it was yesterday or the day before. It was this week that they got populated.
We didn't get to see it yet.
All right.
Well, you have a lot to look forward to.
Well, at least it's going in before because that was my question, is that the dashboard data wasn't in there.
Yes.
And until like yesterday or the day before. Like I said, it was this week that it went in.
It's in there now.
Right.
Yes.
Well, but I didn't get to,
Right.
wallow in the data like Diana does, so
Well, I
I
tried.
I did too. And what's weird is I went in, because Renee sent it via email, and I went and looked, and I didn't see it, and I even hit, the little thing at the top to refresh, and it still didn't, I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty young to try to stay up with technology, but I'm having trouble with this new system.
So one question I have, the very last line item has 39 days of PD professional development in 21 and 22 and 22 and 23 and 5.
And then it went to 5, exactly, because we redefined it in ADCO last week. I was counting the early release days, but they're not really days, they're hours. So if we're looking at if we're looking at days, we have 5. It's teacher contracts are 185 days, students attend 180. They have 5 days of professional development. And it should say that in the narrative. I thought I included it.
You may have, and I probably was just looking at numbers and not reading everyone, I apologize for that.
Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah,
It starts at the bottom of page 18.
Yeah, that-
My narrative explaining why there's such a big change.
Okay, any other questions? Any public comment on this side?
There is no public comment.
Are you sure? Check again.
No, there's still none.
Entertain a motion?
I move to approve the school accountability report card for 23-24 for Fort Bragg Middle School.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Trustee Makla?
Yes.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Munoz?
Yes.
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
And Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
All right, moving on to 10.5, the school accountability report card for Fort Bragg High School.
Good evening, Bruce Triplett, Principal, Fort Bragg High School. And same thing, I'm here to present the SARC, so not really much changes from the years past, so I would just open up to questions.
Any questions?
And I think, ours was, when you came, information was not in there.
All right, if no questions, is there any public comment on the actual SARC?
There is no public comment.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the school accountability report card for 2023-24 for the Fort Bragg High School.
Second?
I'll second.
Perfect, roll call?
Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Munoz?
Yes.
Trustee Makla?
Yes.
And Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Perfect. Item 10.6, school accountability report card for Noyo High School.
Good evening. Kristen Larson Ballier, principal of Noyo High School, Lighthouse Community Day School, and Shelter Cove Community Day School. I'll just stay here.
Any questions? I just have one question. Putting the building conditions as poor, does the state do anything about that? Do they give us anything, or,
It would be nice if they
I
did.
know, right?
You might need more facilities money. Let's help you out with that. No. I think the only thing it would help is if we had to do an emergency application, like if something completely fell in, at least we have it documented that there was an issue there. But we are working to improve some of those.
Looking forward to the new site.
Yes.
All right, any questions?
I have a general question, and I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a drastic shift, and I understand why, but of the per pupil spending between the other sites and these 3 sites. So, but that chart, a lot of them give you the state numbers, but do you know if we are pretty on point with other alt ed sites?
I believe we would be. I think the lion's share of that funding is the CSI funding, and so we get that because of the nature of the student population who we serve, and chronic absenteeism and suspensions are things that we're working on, and likewise, that will continue with the new money called the multiplier. Again, I think will continue to be funded at a higher level than the comprehensive schools.
Right, but
Yeah.
I was.
Do you
if-
mean comparative to
another,
other?
so another
Yeah.
community day school in, even in the county.
Mhm.
I mean, I could look this up, but I didn't know if you knew. I mean, is it?
I think it would be
59?
commensurate. I don't have direct knowledge of that, but I think it would be commensurate.
My experience is, yes, that's generally the case, just smaller population, and you still have teacher salaries and principal salary and all that. That's still attributed to that calculation around that. So it tends to work out to a higher per pupil spending. Usually 30 to 40% has been my experience at other alternative ed sites over the district spending. So above, yes. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'll go look at some other Starks and.
Thank you. No, I will too.
Is there any public comment on high schools?
Nope, there is no public comment.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the school accountability report card for Noyo High School.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, roll call.
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
Trustee Makla?
Yes.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
And Trustee Munoz?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
All right, perfect. So item number 10.8, the school accountability report card for Shelter Cove Community Day School. Just going right in to see if there's- Oh, sorry, Lighthouse, yes.
10.7.
See, I'm getting ahead of myself here. 10.7, Lighthouse Community Day School. Is there any, we'll just move on. Any questions? On the board?
The Lighthouse Community Day School, what grades are those?
Lighthouse Community Day School is 9 through 12 technically, but at this time just 9 and 10.
Is there any public comment on the Lighthouse Community Day School?
No, there is no public comment.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve item 10.7, school accountability report card 23-24, Lighthouse Community Day School.
All right, you want a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Trustee Munoz?
Yes.
Trustee Makla?
Yes.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
And Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Okay, now we go on to 10.8, school accountability report card for Shelter Cove Community Day School. Any questions?
What grades are Shelter Cove Community Day School?
Technically, it can be K through 8, but typically it's 6 through 8, and that's what we have now.
Is there any public comment on the Shelter Cove Community Day School site?
There is no public comment.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the school accountability report card, SARC 2023-2024 for Shelter Cove Community Day School.
Is there a second? Roll call.
Trustee Munoz?
Yes.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Makla?
Yes.
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
And Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. That's great. Moving on to 10.9, the Stay Well Health Plan JPA. Feel free to.
I was going to say, should
You
we?
don't have to stay, but you're welcome to.
Tune in at home.
This is our annual resolution indicating our intent to remain part of the healthcare JPA for next year. And I strongly suggest that.
My only comment was on the resolution itself, that date at the bottom is 2022.
Yes, so we need to, with that correction, we have just the I certify.
Okay, this one was shorter, right, so do you want me to?
Okay.
Sure, yeah, because it's so short.
You let me get back in there, sorry, I logged myself out, see, I no, I'm in, it's just gonna take me to get down here. I will, maybe by June. And maybe Mary's right, I need to quit trying my iPad, because that might be.
The iPad is
You're
really.
fighting
Okay.
the two devices
All
don't
right.
get along.
Resolution 2401, Staywell Health Plan JPA fiscal year 23-24. In order to ensure the continued operations of the Staywell Health Plan and to support the participating management unique in this plan, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees commits itself to support the Staywell JPA by requiring attendance of 3 representatives to the Staywell Board, enforcing all policies of the JPA in accordance with its bylaws. Number 3, maintaining the standard Staywell coverage and deductibles in accordance with the current provider contract for all eligible employees. Number 4, supporting a district wellness committee to address employee wellness, passed and adopted by the Fort Bragg Unified School Board of Trustees in Fort Bragg, California on the 11th day of January 2024 at the regular meeting of the Fort Bragg Unified School Board of Trustees.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on the Staywell?
There is no public comment.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the resolution 2401 with revision.
I'll second.
Perfect, roll call.
Excuse me. Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
Trustee Munoz?
Yes.
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
Trustee Makla?
Yes.
And Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, item 10.10, alternative education equity multiplier proposal.
So we have received some funding this year. It's called this equity multiplier. We honestly were not anticipating receiving this, and so it was a pleasant surprise to see our name on the list. And it's largely due to what they say the mobility of our students from one school to another. I think some of that's just our structure, but hey, it's extra money for our kids. Not going to complain. So it's $100,000. Again, right now in the governor's budget is slated to continue, but it's one of those, it was pretty contentious when it went in last year. So I am cautious to do anything that would be a long-term commitment out of this until we start to see maybe that is truly going to be supported in an ongoing fashion by the legislature. All that being said, we do have a proposal here for a portion of the funds for the remainder of the year for a temporary position to support student support and engagement through a teacher on special assignment. And so it would be a portion of the day spent for a teacher at AltEd to support some student engagement through our restorative practices, through some discipline pieces, and just helping with general supervision, as you heard from Kristen earlier, that's always, AltEd's a pretty open campus there, so it's kind of like herding cats some days. I've been there when I'm just like, there's 3 ways we can go here. It's a lot of fun being there. I always enjoy interacting with the kiddos, but they are very energetic, so I could see where some additional supports are needed there. And then when you start adding in with the kids who are leaving to learn and that sort of thing, it really does. It's awesome that they're getting to get out and do those things, but then you've got kids here and there and everywhere, and so it just, as an administrator, we always start to worry about where are kids, what are they doing, and are they having the proper supports. So this would help address some of those concerns. It would also help with some parent engagement pieces, helping to facilitate some events and reach out, do some of that parent outreach and connections there. Really try to get more folks involved in that shared decision making through site council and some other pieces there. Really help with some teacher development pieces around supporting resources in the classroom, really helping with either instructional or classroom management, those kind of things. You gotta have time to do that. And in a small site, you don't really, everybody's got a role and they're engaged through the whole day, so you don't really have the opportunity to get in and do those things. And then also through attendance support, we know attendance at AltEd is traditionally, in every alt-ed I've ever seen, is always a little lower than the rest of the school district. So really trying to I think we've got the engagement piece is definitely going up, but there's still some other factors that have to be dealt with, and reaching out through the school, the SART team as opposed to the SARB team. And SART is School Attendance Review Team, so that's at the school site, and SARB is the School Accountability Review Board, or
Very
School
similar.
Attendance Review Board, excuse me, it's late. And that is at a district level. And so we try to make sure we get kids connected with whatever resources they need. Back in the olden days, when I first started this job, we would say, SARB, do you need an alarm clock? Now we know every kid's got the phone in their pocket that can function as an alarm. But those types of supports, or are there some resources you need to be connected with so that you have a safe place to be, and all the way, the whole spectrum of things that kids might need that way. And so the total funding for this would be about $27,000 out of this, so it would still leave actually quite a bit of money for us to pursue some other projects that we really haven't even started having conversation about how to engage that. The expected outcomes that we're looking for is definitely the increased staff capacity, strengthening teacher effectiveness, really empowering students to fulfill their potential, increasing involvement from parents and guardians, which is definitely always has been one of my big goals with alternative education, is just to get parents in to have them understand too, because sometimes there's some generational concerns that we can help address and really benefit our community as a whole. And really looking at that, celebrating successes for the attendance rates for kids. We sometimes don't always recognize the struggle that a kiddo might have gone through to get to school that day, and so it would be really nice to have that opportunity to do that. The duration of this would just be for the remainder of this school year. Again, like I say, I don't know that this will be ongoing funding, so I wouldn't feel comfortable in extending it beyond that time at this point anyway.
So my first, because I don't know, do we have to apply? I mean, we obviously are eligible because of our demographics, so it was just dropped out of the sky for any site to use.
Yes.
Not just specific to alt-ed.
No, it's specific to these two
Oh,
schools.
it is, okay.
Yes. So it's specific to Lighthouse and NOYO. So those two together, and I think it's largely because they consider it, it's based off of how many students are moving, don't enroll for the entire year. And so because of our structure where a student might start at Lighthouse and then matriculate into NOYO, they consider that to be moving into two different schools.
Right.
And so it actually ups our eligibility for this, even though the kids are walking to the next classroom on the same campus. So again, I'm not going to complain if the state wants to give us money.
Right.
That's going to target our populations there.
And then how do you address the teacher that's going to this TOSA position, the academic instruction that they were providing? How is that going to balance out?
So my thought on it is we have plans in place in the classroom that are going to be implemented. That teacher will be there to help support as well, but I'll also let Kristen as the mastermind of this. So
the goal would be to have a teacher, an internal teacher, become that TOSA, and then that person would be supporting someone who would be in their advisory classroom for a portion of the day. So it should be pretty smooth.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
The kids are covered.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. The kids are covered. So.
Yes. Any other questions about that?
Is there a deadline when the money needs to be spent by?
There are scant details on this particular thing. This was the governor's sort of baby that made it through the legislature last year, and then they've said you have to supplement and not supplant. And I'm trying to think. There weren't.
That's about it.
It has. has to be proven interventions, which I think everything worked.
Totally works.
So I guess
Yeah.
my question behind the question is, if this works well, can some of the rest of the monies be used to continue the position?
I think so, yeah. I think that we could continue that in the future years if that's what we decided it was an effective use of money, so.
Which brings my question. There's nothing listed under the data collection, and I'm worried as money, that is there going to be some kind of data collected so that if this is wonderful, we can then very solidly say we want to pull LCAP money, general fund money, whatever kind of money that.
Absolutely. Joe asked me to fill that out, and I apologize, I didn't get it done. Yes, we can, data that we can collect definitely would be attendance data. A large portion of our kids are already chronically absent, and there's a handful of them that if they don't have several more absences, they'll drop off of the chronically absent list. We're also talking about analyzing that data internally to just be a little bit more laser focused so that we can act on it more quickly. There will definitely be data from the attendance. I would think regarding the parent engagement, there should be, I could certainly do baseline data and then end of year data, if you'd like. For the parent engagement, we could name the various activities and events and count the number of parents. I know already, I think this is the first time in several years that we've had parents come, for example, to school site council and things like that. For the student supervision and support,
I would think
I
about
don't, I talked with Joe about this. I don't think that it's going to result in decreased referrals because, quite frankly, I can become rather busy with attendance and I don't necessarily log everything in. But I think it will yes, we should see a reduction in suspensions and the rate of suspensions. There should be data.
I'm sure these things will happen.
Yeah.
I know you can track it, but I guess I'm just encouraging to do that as you're going, not
Yeah.
trying to recreate it later,
Mhm.
in case we have to make some choices about what's going to continue. I mean, if you multiply that by a whole year, that's, it's $50,000.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
And all that stuff. So I'm anticipating tough decisions to have to be made at some point, even if it's not next year or the year after, it may be year number 3. So, and then it's always better to do it as we do, as we're going along and not trying to go back and.
Yes.
So.
We can certainly, if you approve this, I will commit to establishing baseline data.
Well, and then the beauty of that is then you can make adjustments while you're in it. Instead of like looking up like, wow, we really missed that.
Yeah.
It's better to do it as you go.
Definitely.
And Christian and I have spoken about making sure that we've got broader access to the iReady assessment so that there's some apples to apples with kiddos before they come to the program too, being that we have the K-8 data or the 1-8 data on iReady as well, so that we can say, well, before they weren't being very successful and they made this growth while they were there as well. So that was, we thought that would be a nice way to, there's already a baseline out there, we can add to it. So.
Any other questions?
Is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve item 10, Alternative Education Equity Multiplier Proposal.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Trustee Babcock?
I'm sorry, can we do one discussion thing?
Of course, yes. Point of
Does
discussion.
this have to be approved by us? I mean, are we going to see what the rest of the money is, what the rest of the 100,000 is spent, or is it just?
I
this is a
would, just
position?
because it's not budgeted, I would bring it to you just to establish a budget, so to speak, for the remainder of it.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there any further discussion?
And just clarifying, this is for the rest, it states for the year, till June.
Yes.
2022.
Okay, so we still have a motion and a second?
Yes, we do.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
Trustee Makula?
Yes.
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
And Trustee Munoz?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
All right, item 10.11, proposal for mindfulness and martial arts program.
So this is a really fun and interesting proposal that we have. So this proposal would be running basically from March until May to provide some mindfulness activities for students centered around martial arts. So specifically around Aikido, which is a non-violent, so to speak, because we were concerned about that. And we would have students from Dana Gray, from the middle school, and from Alt-Ed and the high school participating. Alt-Ed and high school would certainly be an after-school thing. We're thinking middle school. We're trying to push that way as well. Dana Gray may be during the school day, but I think that fits in with kind of developmentally appropriate at that point. They would have about an hour a week that they would spend in the therapy session slash being a part of the martial arts as well. So we would pilot it this year to see, there's a couple of outcomes I want to see is, number one, how much of this can we transfer the cost over to Medi-Cal reimbursement, and can we get that established? So we actually have a partner who, through the Mendocino County Youth Project, who said that we could bill through them, even though we're established as well. So we can find ways during the school day and after school as well to recapture some of this money, I do believe. I'm not sure how much of it is going to come back through Medi-Cal reimbursement, so that's sort of why I'm billing it as a pilot program, just to see where it would go. This program has been implemented in Laytonville, and in Laytonville they're actually taking all of their second graders, I think, but they're so small that they can do that. So, but they have some other grade levels that are participating, all with, the superintendent up there speaks very highly of the program. It's also in juvenile hall. So some of our alternative ed students who maybe have been in the hall, as they come back, they'll have some recognition here and maybe some support in continuing some of the good work that they do there around some of their SEL in just a whole different way. And I think that's what speaks to me with this, is that it is a different research-based way of approaching therapy that really helps. There's been a lot of research on PTSD, so when there's been trauma experienced by someone, if you can keep the physical side in check, then you can actually work on some of the mental side of those issues. Once the body starts to get out of control and the heart rate goes up and you get the dump of all those hormones, this is specifically designed to help keep that from happening so that we can process with kids and keep them at a baseline longer. So the funding source for this would be out of the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant for the remainder of this year.
Any questions?
Yeah, how are you selecting the kids? Do they just sign up to do it? Or?
So it would be through counselor recommendation at the sites. So our counselors will work with the teachers and try to pick the kids that would be likely the best, the most successful in the program, because it does require some discipline and some time and commitment on their part. So.
And they would have to agree, of course.
Of course, yes.
I think it's a great idea. It's, that's increasing the calm in the brain and the learning self-discipline and purposeful action. I think it's great.
I have two questions. One is, I see that you mentioned Laytonville and somewhere else, or not you, but the proposal.
Mm-hmm.
But where else, maybe besides those two very small schools? And then also, was this solicited to us? And what would we be giving? I guess it's three questions. And what would we not be buying? What would we not be purchasing? Yeah, what are we losing with that we could be spending this emergency block grant money on?
Gotcha. So the first, no, it wasn't necessarily solicited to me at all from these folks. I was talking with actually the youth project who has sponsored them in some of the other places. And I just said, you know, tell me, what are some innovative ways that we can kind of reach kids? And they said, well, we're doing this, and, you know, it would be interesting to try to bring it out to the coast. Let's see if it could work. So they actually had a couple months of conversation before this ever even got to a point where we're sitting down at a meeting to try to convince folks and work out schedules so that they could actually build some time to come out to the coast and do this. And then we had the Mendocino Coast Clinics has a grant, and so they want to help pay for some of the out-of-school time for some of this, and so they're talking about perhaps offering a community class or some things like that. So it could really grow into something really nice that way. The Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, if you remember, can pretty much pay for just about anything. So it's pretty flexible monies that way. So it would, I can't point to any one thing that we would be taking away from with that, but we did, as a part of the budget that we established for that, look at counseling and social emotional learning being a part of that. So that's kind of where I thought that would fit within that structure. We do have about, in that budget that I presented, I think we have about 400,000 or so that's not accounted for out there. So we still do have some money there that we could look at expanding other opportunities. And as far as the ongoing funding for this, I would look at writing this, fits very well into the community schools grant that we were speaking of earlier. So there would be an ongoing funding source that's not hitting other places. So I really see it being this kind of one-time seed money for this, and then it would move into other resources at that point. I'm sorry, did I answer all your questions?
You did. I'm sorry I gave you so many of them.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure I was.
No, and I mean, I really had reservations about this because it kind of came out of nowhere. I don't know where it came from, but now that you said you've had a couple months of conversations with people, it makes me feel a lot better. Like it's not just kind of this, oh, here, we're going to spend some money. So it's a lot of money.
It is.
And it's relatively small amount of kids, and I worry our counselors seem to be very thin spread as it is. And so we're going to add that they're supposed to find so many kids and get them done, and then it's got to be done for 3 months. And I don't know. It seems like it was kind of thrown at it, but thank you for explaining that it's really not. And anyway, I do have concerns.
So if the community grant, I thought that was just for Nayo School. So
No, the community grant covers all of the district, and so in looking at the potential there it would be about $6 million over 5 years for the district to support mental health, physical health, kind of all the things around the conditions for students to be successful coming into school. So,
I mean, I had the same questions as Kathy, and you know, my thing is, this isn't compare by any means, but we were looking at Avid, and then we were looking at this, and we're looking at that, and it just feels like we're getting more stuff to have to cut out later, you know, like, so, but if it's, but I really do believe that a lot of what's happening in the schools and outside, that this would central balance kids out. Because I think eating well and doing physical activity, the more you can do that, and teach them, that that's out there, I mean, the exposure to it. But how many kids will this?
So this will serve about 60 kids. So we think about 20 for each age band, basically, as they're moving through. So.
It's pretty high.
Well, it seems like to me it's the kind of program that it's a good investment in the students that are struggling and are probably some of our high absentee students, suspension students. They're learning that self-discipline, and this is the kind of practice that really does calm a person. That might not seem like martial arts, doesn't sound that, but it does. I mean, this could be a huge return fiscally, even to us, because of the absenteeism
Well,
that.
might show up.
Yeah.
So $265 a month per kid. That's what that works out to be.
And again, I think some of that will be realized through maybe some Medi-Cal reimbursement. If approved, then we'll start that conversation to say how can we recapture some of those dollars, because they are licensed counselor, or one of them is a licensed counselor, so it is group therapy and can qualify that way. So I'm not sure how many dollars we can recapture there, but we can recapture some. So
And remind me, this grant has to be spent by a certain date, or?
it does,
No?
but it is years out. We're 20, I think it's 28, June 30th of 28.
And we have $400,000 under that.
In addition to the 1.9 million, I think, that we had in the budget that you had approved in maybe November, I think, is when we brought that. So.
So May, March, April, May.
Any other questions?
It would be nice to, if it was something that, well, we could also, could we pause a month and see? I mean, have we heard from admin? Have we heard from, is this out there that people are excited about it, how it's going to fold into?
I've spoken to, at the staff meetings I was at this week, I've spoken with admin around it, and folks seem pretty excited about it. Spoken, one of the, it was Parents Club, I think, at Dana Gray. You know, just putting out that this is something that's being considered. And I think there was some enthusiasm around it. We can pause. Again, the implementation for this was really looking at March through May. So if there's reticence and you need some more information, then I'd be happy to bring that back to you.
It would be nice to see if the kids could be tracked, if it improves their attendance. And there would be some data that shows that this is really exciting to them and that, boy, they're coming to school now. I don't know. I don't know how we know it's working without it just, I mean, of course, how could it not be helpful? But really, is that?
Well, and if we can get the Aries analytics that we were talking about earlier running, we can actually create a group and literally.
The pod.
We can look at them any day of the week and go, at the high
great.
school level, let's see what their grades are, what their attendance trend has been this week, and all that. It does all that automatically when you say this is the group I want to look at. It just pulls all that together. So I think we can look at many factors for the kiddos because we keep a lot of information there.
So.
My only thought is there a way to develop some parameters around which kids can do this? Like, I know we're going to leave it up to the counselors maybe, but you know, if we're looking at this to help chronic absenteeism, maybe that's a parameter we can really look into. And if the board's not ready to approve it today, maybe you can bring it back with what those parameters.
Certainly, yes.
My other question is the cost. They just presented this number. Have we tried to negotiate, or have we?
I mean, I think this is looking at the cost. I mean, that's pretty standard rates that I've seen in other therapy situations for the folks. It's a lot of time because they're having to come from Ukiah. I mean, there's some travel time involved in that, and having a professional salary at travel time is really increases. And they're not, I don't think they're charging us for all the travel time, but there's some prep time and things like that going into it. So.
Is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion?
Do you think, Kathy?
I think the group support.
Well, as a former counselor.
My reservation is not with this program particularly. My concern is that I don't know, I feel, my gut feels that it's, this sounds terrible, but that we're just spending the money because this was there, we have it, and I just worry that this folding out and getting the right kids and that's adding another thing to, you know, people saying their plates are full and
12. Yeah, I'm sorry that they.
No, maybe be less.
No, because the chart has 12. The chart, so that's all multiplied out. So yeah, that's just, that's a template that they.
Yeah.
I mean, these people sound great, and I am definitely for supporting kids finding different avenues to be successful in their lives and feeling, positive experiences. I just don't, because it kind of came out of the blue on our end anyway, that is this the best, I feel better if I was maybe picking from 3 things or picking from 2 things. I'm just kind of saying, okay, these people are great, and I think, and I don't know. I struggle with this for some reason.
It's a pilot program, right? So we're going to have to try it out to figure out all those answers and those questions that you're having. But it sounds like Mr. Aldrich gave us an example that Laytonville, it was very successful. And how often do you get an opportunity to have a counselor come and engage with a student one-on-one and also teach them mindfulness? That's an opportunity I would have liked to have taken advantage of, even if I wasn't a absentee student. But teaching mindfulness, I think, will be longevity in their life. They'll have that perspective to think, okay, what did I do back then? And they quiet your mind, quiet your spirit, take things to slow down, because we are in a fast-paced world. When do they get the chance to do this? So it's a pilot program. If it doesn't work out, then we won't do it again. We'll move it on to a different alternative that you'll have, like a second option or something.
Well, and we've talked about SEL for a long time, but certainly all through COVID. And we've tasked Joe with finding what are some good programs, what are the things that we can do to support all kids. I think this is one that, I think 60 kids is a pretty high number of kids that could have a huge impact. And to me, that's not that much money for something that could have a huge payoff for them and for the school.
Well, I would think, Joe, that if these people are good at what they do and have done this before, I mean, it'd be great, sure, we started a pilot program, but maybe part of next year's PD is a third of the day is spent with them, giving staff the skills to bring mindfulness to every classroom. Not Aikido, because that's obviously more training, but, yeah, it's a pilot program, but wouldn't it be great if we incorporated 5 minutes of mindfulness every day? And teachers actually, staff knew how to do that, and Crystal's life, it's just such a fast-moving.
Yep.
I think they'd be excited to do that if, in asking them. I've got a meeting with them this coming week, so I'll mention that also.
So I think the intent is start with 60, from where I sit, and how do we bring it to?
And where would they be
every
doing
child?
this, since we have a gym location space problem?
Well, that's why, train the trainers.
Right.
Again, not the
Well, I'm
Aikido
saying
side of
venue,
things,
like where is this happening?
Yeah.
Since we have a
space
shortage
issue.
space issue.
Yes.
That's figured out?
So we're working on, really, I think the middle school's kind of the hard one. For over here, we would use the old boardroom over at the JD Center. We've already kind of talked about that being a possibility for the high school and for Dana Gray, because it's pretty easy access there. So. And I think at the middle school, we talked about the stage, because that's kind of where they're doing wrestling practice right now, so.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the.
Question earlier about space.
Yes, that's our challenges with space. But they do have the mats out on in Cotton Auditorium, so.
Well, and it starts in March, so then we'll be to baseball, there'll be more outdoor stuff.
More outdoor stuff, if it's not raining.
Oh.
I don't know how that works.
All right, so I guess I'll entertain a motion if anyone wants to make a motion.
I would like to move to approve the proposal for mindfulness and martial arts program.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Roll call.
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
Trustee Babcock?
No.
Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
Trustee Makala?
Yes.
And Trustee Munoz?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
And let's track.
Yes.
Yes.
It would be good to see what the parameters are for which kids.
I'll bring that back to you. So.
Okay, sorry, I got a little distracted. Let's move on to item 10.12, out-of-state travel request.
So we have a student who is placed in an out-of-state residential treatment facility. And the state law requires that we send someone from the LEA out to inspect the facility at least once annually. So Carolyn drew the short straw on getting to go to Utah in February.
Oh.
Because I've been in Utah in February. It's cold. So she's not really looking forward to how cold it's going to be. However, it is.
Maybe beautiful.
I hope it is a beautiful time for her. I mean, it can be beautiful. It can also be brutal.
Why February? If we have a whole year to do it, is it the school year?
It's through the school year. So we would have until June to complete this. So if for some reason, she was just looking at February as her availability before we kind of get in that end of the year scramble that starts to happen around
And if something's not
March.
going well, she probably should see.
Yeah.
Earlier than later.
Yeah, and that was the other conversation we had was just there are a lot of problems that come up in these places, and so we want to put eyes on our student there and make sure that they're okay. So
And then this is out of, what's the funding source?
it would just be out of general fund. Yeah.
They don't offset.
Yeah.
Per se.
Or special education in
Yeah.
but still general fund.
And I did notice there's no money for mileage or meals at all. Again, I just don't want to shortchange anyone who's traveling.
Oh, yeah, it says at 40 per day, 0.
So,
Hmm.
just want to make
Yeah.
sure, even if they provide, I can't imagine they provide food when she's there.
No,
She's just
I would think that
expected
it would be,
school.
yeah.
That's just the budget, but they're obviously getting a lot daily allotment.
Mm-hmm.
Right, per diem.
Yes.
Well, and that kind of came in after the item was there anyway, so that sheet, it
Mhm.
wasn't there when I first looked at the item, so.
Yeah.
Maybe it just got in haste.
It was, and Carolyn was leaving for a conference this week, so it was, as she was walking out the door, almost, that I received
I don't
this,
think
so.
we're approving the amount, right? We're just
No,
approving
'cause
that they're
this is
going
really
out to
just,
state, yeah.
this isn't the request for reimbursement. This
Right.
is,
No,
this is,
it's
there's a
just-
different form that gets filled out later. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Correct.
So I'll move to approve that estate travel request.
I'll second.
All right, roll call.
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
Trustee Munoz?
Yes.
Trustee Makala?
Yes.
Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
And Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
All right, item 11.1, board policy 5030, wellness policy update.
All right, so our wellness policy inadvertently got caught up in one of our CSBA updates. And so, and we actually had a really great wellness policy. It was, a lot of work went into it. And so we have reviewed that with the proposed change with the Wellness Committee, and Pilar has been instrumental in reviving back to the previous version that we had so that we don't get caught up in that again. And it also cued Renee and I in to start looking at how do we tag custom policies so that they stand out to us in a way. So we posed this question to the fine folks at Gammon. And when they tell you, oh, we'll get that to our development team, we know, okay, we've got to come up with our own solution for that. So we're working on a system to maybe, track it through footnotes or have a list somewhere that we just cross-reference whenever these updates come out so that we know that we keep our custom policies in place and don't end up with this. There was one additional policy that got caught up in that is our homework policy, so I'll bring that back around to you as well. But other than that, like I say, the Wellness Committee has had a chance to review this. I think the policy makes very good sense and really highlights the values that I've heard our board and our community speak of. So
I had a couple notes. One is, do we need to change the K to TK now that, I mean, these are small things, but.
Yeah.
And then,
Oops.
now I need to find it. I just wrote down wellness, allowable beverages. So
Yeah.
somewhere, there seems to be a epidemic, is that the right word? For the amount of Starbucks. And it says something about color. And so I immediately saw the food runners delivering Starbucks to the front office. So I didn't know if that's, no, I can't find, there's something
It's
specifically
on page
mentioned
5.
about,
May not contain, allowable beverages may not contain.
it's the water, they can have water
Yeah.
with a lid, and then it
Sweetener except for
specifically says
fruit.
something about, oh, right here.
May not
Beverages may not contain artificial, non-caloric sweeteners and added sweetener, anyway.
Or stimulant.
May not contain artificial sweeteners, colors, high fructose. So I don't know if that was something that might have been discussed at the wellness committee.
No, we did
And
not
it's
talk
only,
about
I mean,
that
it's a
specifically.
upper grade schools, but I
That
know
was
it's an
in-
issue.
Yeah, that was
I
in the
mean,
original.
the stuff gets delivered to the front office and it's a
Just
dis-
can't provide it, I think, is what
Right.
the wellness policy is looking
Is-
at, what we
Oh,
can
gotcha.
provide.
Okay.
what's
Exactly.
available.
But
Yeah.
what about when it comes through, I mean, I know kids bring it in from the car, but, but it's the I mean, I can't imagine what the front office has to deal with this food runners thing. And then, so,
Well, remember, it used to be AMC Grocery delivering boxes full of lunches to the front office
Right.
desk.
well, to me, that's a little healthier
Well,
than
no,
what's
I'm
coming in
just saying
now.
that that distraction has been going on.
You're right.
But like you, that's a good point. It's,
Yeah.
we aren't saying, here's your sodas, kids,
Yeah.
it's Friday, in the classroom.
Right.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if this could
That's a good
possibly give
trigger.
any support to not being an educational distraction. Because the kids are saying, I have to go to the bathroom. I mean, I have a teenager, I know how this works, and I used to be a teacher. I have to go to the bathroom, and they come back with their Starbucks that got delivered by the marquee, by the food
Well,
runners
they're
person. It
they're
doesn't even go
cracking,
through the office.
they're
They're
cracking,
smart.
oh, wow.
They're smart enough to leave it at the marquee. I mean, it's getting pretty
Oh, well, because they
sophisticated.
said that not during
Yeah.
break and lunch, and that's it. Like it was getting horrendous.
And
It was
so
like a
then-
Starbucks
Yeah,
cup.
it's just crazy.
Of course,
Yeah.
prior
Okay.
to,
Bypass
prior to
my thing.
food
So
runners,
the only thing I have,
they were
Yeah.
they were cutting school to go get it, so.
well, apparently they've tried and he throws a fit.
Well, he will, but the other one won't.
Oh, I don't know which one that he is, but I just heard they've tried and it's not going anywhere.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that was and then the other thing was about punishment. Do we really still need to put that in there? I feel like that sounds like we were doing it.
Hmm.
And I know it used to be an issue, but I wouldn't think nowadays it is. but-
Not, pretty much you can't.
That you
they
can't
have to
take
go out to
away, yeah, you can't take
recess.
away recess,
Oh, yeah.
you can't.
And that's
punish.
actually, yeah, that's now a state law.
Yeah,
Right, so I
Um,
feel like
code.
when we
that
put
says
it in there,
that.
it calls attention to it, but
Yeah, you're
anyway,
right. It
that's
was-
my
sounds
own
like we, like,
sensitivity, yeah.
I think it's just one of those, like, you'll see it come back up in some policies, probably in March is when they'll probably have that update come out. Because it has been passed in the state law that we can't use physical activity as punishment or take away recess.
Right, I thought that was kind of a common thing nowadays. That's why I didn't know if we needed to,
Should
but
be,
it's okay.
but
Yeah, I think it's just reiterating it. Pilar and I spoke about that specific and just said, she said, leave it in, leave it out. So, I mean, we're not married to it, but at the same time, I said, I think repeating it here, because if you're thinking wellness as you're reading this, you may not go pull that other policy about recess or whatnot, so.
it's a good reminder.
So.
Any other discussion? Okay, moving on to 11.2, board policy administrative regulation updates.
Okay, so got to see the long list of updates that came out in December. I kind of started writing a list of everything that it touches on, and it's just kind of all over our policy manual, I think, up and down. Though a lot of the changes are just the statutory type changes that come through.
This is just a checklist that goes with the,
okay.
with those sheets. So that, because there was a question from a board member regarding options. And for this set, there are only 3 that have fill in the blank sections.
Yes, and so
So
those
there's
are
no
typically,
optional
positions or names, that kind of thing that would be the person to report to on that particular item or whatnot.
So there's no options for us to choose from in these.
Not on these.
There actually were 6 that were optional policies. Most
Yeah,
of them
the
were
whole
board.
policy is optional,
Yeah,
yeah.
like the accountability one was optional or revised to reflect your practice. Same thing with the citizen advisory was optional, and the waivers. So that was interesting. A lot of the board policy, well, that was an AR though.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I mean, we don't normally like to just throw them in if it's optional, unless it's something that,
Well, and we can go back and look at which ones are updates of existing
I was gonna
policies that we
say, I
have
think-
optionally, and bring that back to you as well, so that you
yeah.
can.
Because some of them had an AR that was not an option, but the board policy was optional. So I don't know what the, normal.
But I think they were all ones
The very
that we,
top,
that we have approved before. They're not new.
like accountability.
See, I
It's
thought
not
that
there,
I
'cause I
checked
didn't
them
see it
all.
there, that's what I read. Was
Yeah.
not, I didn't read the
Red line.
because they were all law changes, so I didn't read the.
Mhm.
Yeah, the very top of them, it tells you if it's optional.
Of the red line version.
Mm-hmm.
And also gives the revised dates, adopted dates.
That's true. I mean, you have the top, whereas they were here before,
Mhm.
but they are optional.
Yeah, so we typically want to bring, we'll bring it back for consideration if, on the optional policies, if we like what's in place better than what's being recommended. It's okay, it's just if we start to get too far away from whatever the ed code intent is around that particular policy. It can sometimes get a little messy, but it's, if there's anything in any of these that you don't feel comfortable with, please do reach out and let us know so that we can do some research around it.
Like page 26. it says
I was seeing a
optional.
lot of things that were based on adding ELL students,
Mhm.
adding gender,
Mhm.
Yeah.
things like that that are super important for us to do.
Well, and that one was strange, where you had an opt-out
Yeah, I
on the
didn't really
comprehensive health
understand, but
education.
I
Yes,
thought I
so-
knew what they meant, and then I was like, their wording was really wonky.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess that one's not optional, though.
No, and health education, there's been a long-standing law in the state that has allowed for, basically, we say we have to provide health education and the parent has to provide, we call it negative permission.
Right.
Or, where they say, I don't want my child participating, particularly, it tends to center around sexual health education.
Right. But they were saying there were some areas that they don't get to opt out.
Yes.
So that's where it was like, I don't know how, if anyone would take you to toe to that, but I don't know how they would, that, to me, it means, it almost seems like it's covering, like if it was in literature, you wouldn't necessarily opt out because you wouldn't really know. I don't know how you could get ahead of that, and that may not be an issue later on, but if it's curriculum, obviously that's where they don't want people opting out of.
Right.
Well, and they did say that they want all students, if you have a health curriculum, that all students will learn compression CPR. Are we gonna do that? That's awesome. Who's teaching that?
I think that's an addition, yeah, so,
You may, maybe.
Oh, no, it said shall. I double checked because I was like, oh, now I've got to find what page it was on, but.
I have a general question. One of these refers to a school nurse, which I know we don't have. But then I think I saw in the warrants where we paid pretty hefty chunks. So could you just tell us
Sure.
what's happening as far as the health aides and the?
So we do contract with a school nurse through MCOE, and she's with us a couple days a week, something, I think. Either directly on site or serving us remotely. She's done that as well. So she helps out. She spent a lot of time with immunizations this fall, I think is probably why we haven't heard much else going on.
Oh.
We kind of, thanks to our audit last year, was when it came out. There was a question about some immunizations and students who didn't have full immunizations continuing, so we really took a deep dive at that, and we now are pretty compliant across the board. I think we've really resolved, with the exception of one or two cases here or there, making sure all the students had all of their immunizations. Unfortunately, we've had to exclude those 1 or 2 students who haven't followed through, but it's really getting the parents to move forward with that and make sure that they're either immunized or we have the exemptions, which are just really hard to get now for a lot of parents. And I've spoken with a lot of frustrated parents, but anyway, I digress. We have had the nurse participating in that. She's actually been a really good resource that way. She's helped us with some of our COVID compliance pieces and whatnot. Sorry, sometimes it seems like it's echoey and sometimes it's can't hear it all. Sorry about that. So we have the nurse is with us pretty regularly working. She's worked a lot with probably Dana Gray and Ed Redwood. I would say was probably, she spends the lion's share of her time with those because it kind of makes sense. She also completes all of our screenings that need to be done for special ed. She's talked about if we miss any kids with the hearing van, she can do the hearing screenings and all of all those things. So
Emailed him last night, asked about that very thing.
yes, I was gonna say.
All right, any other questions, comments? No?
We just have the high school graduation requirements you have to fill in.
Do you know what
The
page
extra.
that's on? By any chance?
Yeah, that's a special policy that the district has already drafted, so the language that's
175.
there will be put into that one. That we have some alternate language around some of the required courses. The added language there has to do with the ethnic studies graduation requirement that's being added.
So we need to put in our language?
Yeah, so our
Yeah.
language will have to go in there as well.
Okay, so it's
175.
not current.
That's one of our special
That's not.
special footnoted policies.
And then the exhibits just populate when you need. I don't know what the update was. They look like you just had examples of how you'd have to display it on an agenda.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Do we have to put on these, the grad requirements, the coastal adult school changes?
No, not adult school changes. no.
Okay.
This is just high school graduation requirements. And there are 2 on here. I'll fill this out, and I'm assuming this will be part of the governance meeting too, to have some clarification on what the board wants with this. But there are 2 on here. I know the education for juvenile court schools, 7173.3. That's not been previously adopted by the board, so. And there's another one like that. I believe it's the waivers, 1431 possibly. Anyway, there are 2 on here that have
That are
never been
optional.
adopted before, so you may not want to adopt them now.
Okay, anything else?
There is a
No?
there is a public comment.
Oh, great.
We have a public comment from Jorge Johnson. He wants to know, is there going to be an Anchor Academy next school year? This is such a great program for our community. Thanks. So, from the public.
Can somebody explain to me what Anchor is?
Yeah.
Yes, so Anchor Academy is a school within a school at Fort Bragg High School that serves students. It gives them more of a, basically they stay there for a few periods so that they get anchored in their day and kind of work on some of the areas that our students typically find more challenging. So making sure they're getting their English requirements and their social studies requirements and their math requirements kind of taken care of in that setting. And yes, there's an intent to continue that into next year. We're looking at how to make that work with the changes in staffing that we've had, but I'm having that conversation next week with our high school staff. So
That makes me very happy that somebody took the time to write in on that.
yes.
Yeah. And there's another thing.
Anchor also has a large component of volunteerism in the community, so they take the kids out and do a lot of volunteering or clean up of paths, things like that.
Cleanup and stuff like that.
Okay.
They did supervision at Redwood, playground supervision,
We do a
Yeah.
lot.
they do actually every Friday, I think.
Oh, cool.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to hearing more about that.
All right, so moving on to item 12.1, board reports. I'd like to start. I know it's late.
Yep.
It's a long meeting.
I'll go. I just wanted to do, I'm trying to do a shout out and not the laundry list of things we've done, but I wanted to give a shout out to the basketball tournament committee. I wasn't there, but I was a sponsor, and I just, the extra effort and not only was it a wonderful, from the pictures I've seen and the amazing photographers we have in our community that are doing that for free, well, I mean, they're asking for money, but anyway, you can just see the joy in children's faces. But they really went above and beyond to make that event top notch. And I just wanted to give, I know, I heard somebody said 16 hours and they weren't even there either, that they put into the tournament ahead of time. So I just want to, there's lots and lots of people, but that brings a lot of money to our community, to our program, and a wonderful experience for students and adults. So I just want to thank them for that.
I have a shout out too, actually. I'm going to use your verbiage. And it was just today I went up to Alt-Ed actually to drop something off. But every time I go to that school, there are at least one or two kids I get out of my car. Hi, how are you? Welcome to our school. And are you having a good day today? I mean, every time. Yeah, one kid, you know who I'm talking about, Joe. He's like their professional greeter. He's amazing. He's definitely got a future in politics or something. But they're all so friendly and welcoming, and
They like visitors.
They do. It was really,
All
it's
kids.
always nice. Yeah, and their presentation tonight, that was the highlight for sure.
I wrote something down that they said, that a leader cannot be, what was it? You need to be vulnerable to be a leader.
Yeah,
An alt-ed student's voice. I
that
mean,
gave me goosebumps
it
when she
did.
said that. That was
pretty
Yeah.
powerful.
yeah, very cool.
So I'm going to tell you the nerdy stuff I was doing. No shout outs. Although I did go to site council, 2 different schools, and that's good. We need more folks because this is the year of advocacy. We need to get out what people need, what they want,
Yep.
and to like prioritize education. So CSBA did that, and that's just what they said. I'll sum up the governor's budget. They really want people they're going to do another virtual legislation action day. And they're keeping it virtual because it allows 400 people to attend.
Yep.
Normally, if you go on site, they just cap it to 125 for all the 1,000 districts. So, and I think they even kind of cut us off. Like we wanted 3 people to go, and they had to keep us just 2. So anyway, that's the big deal there. And then I actually looked back at 2019, our chronic absenteeism. And elementary school was 12% chronic absenteeism, and now it's 50-ish.
For Redwood
So,
for
and
last
then
year, yes.
like a couple years prior to that, it was like 25, it was like half. So I don't know what we were doing back then. We were healthy, was no pandemic. I mean, we have to stop using that excuse because now we have to like move forward to look where we were at last, in 19.
I think one thing we learned though from the pandemic was to not be at school when you're sick.
Right.
Because, I mean, I know, I can tell you how many days I
Wow.
went to school and taught when I was sick. I know we all did, and I know that the kids,
Yeah.
they're like, I've got a test today, I don't care. I think that was part of it.
Yeah, well.
I know we don't want to make excuses, but
Right, I totally get that, but I think there's just no way, I don't know how you can be successful if you're missing, even if it's twice, 3 times a month. And I know illness is excluded, but I think that across the board, it's consistent that everyone's kind of lost the value of going to school daily when you're healthy.
Yep.
All right. 12.2, advanced planning, suggestions for future board meetings.
We got our lineup already.
Yeah.
So the 20th, we have our training, third training, Nicole. And then I think we're confirmed for February 10th.
Yes.
One thing we do need to plan for is renewing the superintendent's contracts. So we'll have to have start with a closed session right on that, and then go from there.
Probably in April-ish.
And I want to capitalize on your question, Scott, and Kelly Smith's response that we should have a workshop / study session on the question about, our data and where we're going. So I would like to add that sometime after we get through all these other things. Or, you know what, we can't just put it down. So, maybe March, after these two and,
just a workshop?
the students are important, so I can't just say we'll get to it when we get to it. It needs to
No,
happen.
definitely.
Maybe a goal is before the April break.
Sounds good.
And then if we could get a list of our duties, because I know we kind of went back and forth and flip-flopped on who was on the safety committee, and I don't recall.
And would it be in a folder as well?
I didn't see it on the, you saw it on the minutes?
No.
It wasn't populated when I saw it. Anyway, that's.
Well, who,
And then the revised.
because there's a meeting next week, so we need to figure out who that is.
Yeah, revise the agenda setting with Crystal's name and there's some minor changes.
Yeah, I asked to
Yeah.
swap. Is this the one? No, this has Jerry on it. This is the wrong one.
And Joe, do you think you'll hear from Nicole by tomorrow, or you're gonna reach out to her to get the pre-work?
I'm hoping. So
It was on the home,
Well, yeah, it was on
the
prior.
agenda
It just
from
said-
last
It just
time,
said
yeah.
4 and 5.
No, it's one
Where
that looks,
was
it's,
Yeah, it's just, she was gonna send us a new email with everything, and we had even communicated about it last week, and haven't heard anything from her, so
Okay.
I went past
I will
the last
hopefully
year,
hear
so
that,
it looks
and,
like this, except it's
It
short
was
form.
on there.
But it
On the
has-
minutes?
Last minutes.
Yeah, I don't know where the new
But-
one is. I thought I had. As I say, I'm trying to get rid of paper. Here's this file with all this paper in it.
So is there anything else for future board meetings? I know we're gonna schedule the orientation sessions with Crystal for each of us.
We
So if you
need to
could-
do our self-evaluation ahead of
Yeah.
time.
The self-evaluations due on 31st.
And that got sent out and I thought Scott and I were gonna talk about it, but anyway, we had talked about from the work at CSBA that we would answer it once with the lens of individual and then once, are we gonna do that or no?
But how do we,
Well,
getting
we
two
would have to
different
do it
ones?
twice, so,
right, but once we submit it, then
It's
how does it
gone.
get,
right, so
yeah.
we're just gonna do it based on ourselves. We've been struggling with it for the last
And then we think we
multiple
really
years.
need to hammer it out and change it. I mean,
The other thing we can do is wait until after the February 10th. We can talk about it the February 10th and.
Oh, yeah,
if we're
January.
waiting too long at that point. And do a
I can
revised one.
send out a second survey if you want.
Do
and
survey A and
so
survey
the
Well, I haven't
one
done
you
the first
have
one,
right
so.
now can be for you as a board.
Okay,
And
good,
then I can
'cause-
I can make a duplicate of that one and change it, the wording a little, so it's more obvious
As
that
in-
it's you as an individual, and I can send that out to you.
Because you want to see that.
That was just a
populated.
suggestion,
No, I think
because
it's a
we've
good
been
idea.
struggling with, so these questions, it's like,
Yeah.
well, I know what I do, but I don't know what Scott does.
Right.
And so, one of the suggestions at our conference was we do it once, answering it from our personal perspective, and then once as it feels when we're sitting here at the table.
as a group, as a board.
As a board, yeah. And so,
Like one of the questions is the board prepares for meetings.
Right.
So am I asking for myself or am I assuming how everyone else is?
Right, so as a board, we would have to say, at a meeting, I feel like everybody or nobody or some people or whatever are prepared. But
Right.
then you can independently say, so I still think we should do that.
And you can also, answer what you can, but don't feel like you have to answer all of it.
And I do still think we need to revise it. Like the almost always for some of the questions is ridiculous.
you want a middle one.
Well, I think
Well,
we
no,
just need
there's almost
3.
always
You
doesn't
almost
even
just need
match.
3. 4 is, I don't remember how many we got down to, but 3
Yeah.
is.
Well, and I mean, just
I
the
don't know,
actual
it's just
words
some of
don't
the
make
stuff we've
sense.
been
So it looks like we
wordsmithing
read
every year
chapters
for-
5 and 6 in the governance core.
And then we're supposed to read
And the
5.
curve cut effect.
Yeah, we're supposed to read 5 of the one that ADCO
That's
is
in
reading.
the bottom
right?
of the agenda from December 2nd.
I would
Okay,
recommend
so
5,
it-
yeah, I think it's the most powerful.
Right.
From the other workbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not on here, but
That's from that. Well, that was the.
And that was what you-
That was just my suggestion, was it's sort of
Chapter 5
out of the.
Out of the big book, yeah, out of the racism book.
Yeah, I started a little bit of it.
It was sort of the, here we go.
The
Yeah, got it.
substance.
It was where it started getting really
So
juicy.
January 31, self-evaluation.
Oh, and Crystal needs those books, right?
She has
She's-
them.
Oh, she's got them, you're on it.
Yeah,
Wow.
we had lunch.
Last
Oh, right, right. Good.
We were pretty run down. What's going on? All right, for housekeeping, so we have Three Rivers on this tomorrow, no, next week.
I'll go to that.
Alt Ed, school site council meeting.
I'll go to that.
Oh, gosh, all dead.
And our workshop on the 20th, board agenda on the 29th with Diana and myself.
I might try to,
Railroad
I haven't been to
Elementary
Three
School
Rivers
Site
forever.
Council on the 5th.
I don't know, we'll see how it goes.
I don't remember who the Redwood rep is.
It's the new, is
It's
Crystal.
Crystal.
Ah,
I'll go.
okay, so that's Friday the 5th at 11 o'clock. LCAP input meeting
11 a.m.,
on,
wow.
also on the 5th at 5:30.
Oh, are we gonna try to figure out who's going to those so that, or I guess we decided more than 2 could.
Yeah, so we have the 5th
We
and the
just don't-
15th.
We just don't speak.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah,
so I will
we're-
definitely, I'll go to the one on the, I should probably put it in the calendar.
I have a calendar too.
I don't know what day of the week that is.
It's a Monday and a
5th is a
Thursday.
Monday and-
Yeah.
We're both at 5:30. But yeah, I mean, if it did, we aren't on the panel or anything, so we could, not that we all want to be there, but there's no conflict.
No, there's,
So we
we can
wouldn't.
all,
Okay.
so parents club for Redwood Elementary is
I'm
the
gonna do
6th.
the 15th.
Scott and
that's
Kathy.
kind of 2 in a row for you.
If I
but
can't do
don't-
the 5th.
Okay,
If that's too much, that's,
I'll try, and I'll try
okay. And then our board meeting on the 8th, and then our retreat on
the time.
the workshop on the 10th. I'd say email, I don't know if we want to schedule an agenda setting for the workshop, or if you just want to email items for an agenda. How have you done
I
it?
did last year. I think you should.
Agenda setting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is already a draft agenda in the agenda,
So
so
maybe,
you can already
do that.
start. Sure.
So will you schedule something for Kathy and I and Joe? And in the meantime, anything you want on the agenda, obviously. Appropriately. And with that, anything else? I feel like my first meeting was so long. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It was all your fault,
Second
Scott.
So you're seconding it?
I said, oh, I
Yeah.
said so moved.
So moved, and you're seconding it.
I'm not seconding.
Okay, I'll second.
All right, there you go.
Let's finish
I'm
this.
not- I'm
I
not-
just can't take that over. That